Actually, not check right now the Mercury side. Like I'm calling and reporting to like the government part about that those that infiltrated into black park that are happening right now with black park or in the camping board. That we know the election right now for like the exact cost that I'm discussing right now. Park will be giving to camping board right now to see that power has flown and been used on that camping board to that scale. Or like for camping board to that execute plan B will be not that would like or that I'm right now for like the park is like phone and health that goes right now. It's like the scenario that I'm putting and for that plan B the different version of like if this would be to that execute something like the scenario that our going like for them to like execute that the explosion of that the boat while them escaping being able to like escape uh through that side to the left like the Ruby hidden timer searches as well within that both like the government as well as black jack. So might be the case with the human that which like they might have set up considering such of the current kind of black work scenario. Uh, might be the case with human so like that like I'm saying that Captain Go and I'm putting like the timer that like Captain Go would be like setting so like the closing and would be that approximately a 30-second timer within which that I'm leaning more that 60 like I'm leaning more towards like 15 like 30-second timer and that global timer which like Captain Go would be setting and like Captain Go with that at least good basically putting on with that I should and this will be planning on like jumping out of that boat and like it will that is why instantly eliminating that the team of that boat might be like the plan. So like in the project scenario to be that Park Capital would be attempting to do the same thing, but like I'm doing the scenario will that exactly like look at Park right now. The need to like the Park right now being aware of like its choice being held in that station and everything that Park Gateway right now would be definitely thing that basically uh, that basically even with like the current interaction between that Jumbo and Park and even at that point right now as that Park and Jumbo that we have to like communicate with that Captain Sport that Jumbo saying that like Jumbo not that trying to catch up Park to them at this point that and trying to stop with like Jumbo not even trying to like stop Park at this point that yeah but from Park's point of view that Park only vomiting that he thinks only due to that because of the capturing Mr. during that interaction alone that like even at this point as well that Jumbo will be unaware of that uh, unaware that network is connected to that specification that with the along the line network is using that because solely due to that Mr. getting captured by the things that Mr. still haven't been able to let phone and reveal that critical information to Jumbo even at this point with the along the line that part will be only feeling right now the million players so like get like part will be also considering about that and without great delay for like a call from the choice to that example probably happen. Uh, that would be also that see the possibility that Park would be right now considered. So like I'm just Park as well right now. I'm just saying that I think after that doing making or things action to captain for like in hard straight away Park as well simultaneously around that captain go on position Park as well straight away that setting up trying to like set up that timer also. So that exactly that Park would be that strategy that like opening up that hidden location within that the boat where like the timer explosive at that point is when I was putting that Park getting cornered by that all of a sudden Park realizing that basically that Zanko has already found out and after that way getting cornered by Zanko and declaring anything of Zanko at that moment scenario the second definitely was that the current situation even being that much joy like running off with that phone even though with hands up but like right now is that running off with that phone and like using Siri to that call so that I'm putting that right now while Park would be like communicating with like communicating with like Captain Co and would be like going another friend basically or to Captain Co to that so then eliminate like the board by saving Captain Co while the saving from like Captain Co. So while Park will be giving the score to Captain Co and then Penal being like during this time while Park will be giving the score to like Captain Co on the example exactly during this time the phone from that Mr. Happening for that Jumbo getting that call from that Mr. That was like such another way. And Jumbo talking you finding out the code that like uh, and at that point, I'm for example, even without evidence that maybe believe it's a choice, that's one person scenario that for like a lot of good that for like was like in that phone call like story would be like frantically that basically telling example that this is that we had found that Squid and a whole lot of money from that is the house of that the roadman park and all that like I'm putting that for one point it is for like while drawing the thing like a frantic voice with the penny to the phone to that example. At that point, maybe example of me. At that point, maybe she's thinking about the of that. Maybe very actually being right example. Only at that point that deciding to like set up on like path. And maybe at that point, we are only finding that path that steadily trying to like set up an explosive on the same time in that way that example along with reflecting on the like to reach job topic like one position out of that so the positive from like example like believe right right now as job with the I think most of the media right now would be able to like go on like about the place and capture and like like metro city managing to like get that all concept and even be able to like speak to that example right now is like out of that story like frantically saying to like jump one like a direction of that path to like the citizens and at that point maybe left jump on that point only feeling as if that Mr. Joy that totally interaction basically that saying the should be along the lines maybe yeah jump at that point when assume solely due to like the lack of that's exactly and that the like jump exactly trying to manipulate turning jump to that exact same person like that police chief who had that exactly like current situation of the story that which back then in like the past that were like example and frantically and bring it right to that make has to convince that the police chief the fact that the police chief solely accused to actually jump out solely due to that the lack of evidence that can defend the person made jump out turning into time turning to that very that same kind of that person is like jump out still even in the situation and that still accusing to that that different to that something like Mr. Choice one and that is the part comes to the student. So like at that point, I'm going that's like for that that was totally telling that and so going back to like story that story is like totally and totally and saying about the two of the line that jump on that's coming back to that story. So like at that point, still shouting out to that part to like check his phone that the story has like repeatedly example to like check his phone that like that story has like photos evidence like this that way like at that point like Jumbo getting that absolutely the shock of like being like the photo of like the secret uniform like the when the scenario that I'm looking for so like that way like I'm maybe that's like the probably that I'm doing that way like only through seeing evidence that way like Jumbo that way that getting particular and that straight away as like Jumbo will be going up to work like path like at that point that path consistently trying to like set up like the explosive the timer for like the explosive so like at that point itself like jump off I don't know if it's like thing and I'm able to like stop pump and capture pump it's like the eventual other population after that and that's point. So like I'm certainly that this realization of the we still even to this point I'm going to realization being like extremely shocking for that jump is like the scenario that I was going through like I'm even well jump out it's like an was like an police officer like I'm still I'm that whole maybe I'm thinking that there might be also a better than side of that example whom I felt that absolute bond of that friendship towards like the boatman part during like the time going that like they had traveled together something for like the studio my for like about 2 days that was so that way like I'm different that so like I'm different the person with the scenario being it being fast food steering for like example most of the realization that like I'm still like because like using just any steering for example that I'm like in my example would be like capturing and stopping parts from like picking up like the kind of like closer sambil tutoring that still Jumbo would be in like an emotional kind of like a state and that state that like Jumbo will forgetting about that with me what exactly part had just now communicated to the capital. So like I'm thinking that at that point like I'm like literally that once like Jumbo be remembering about that like I'm thinking the photo of it at that point like holding part by the collar and basically that shouting out to that stuff as to that to tell them as to that what part had that communicated to that. And at that point, like totally napping at that jump in that signal of this like synapse that I'm like because like at that point I'm going to bring that but like a different skill that jump that find and at that point I'm putting example for me quickly falling. Like the at that point, I'm going to jump out only quickly falling. That's the team B. And basically, the team B of jumps and quickly telling them that the captain go is that the racer and the black quickly move to them. So that at that point, that one of the team B member like getting that call. And at that point, like him properly realizing that so like jump at that point and as like he would be totally that quickly searching for quickly searching for Captain Go like like him focus on using that Captain Go jump out of that the boat with like a dice suit and at that point then like the boat of like the team be exploring just like the scenario. So like Junko through his like phone call like basically Junko will be sharing like the sound of that explosion. Without my created at all once like Junko will be calling and reporting revealing the to like the team members like the scenario. So like that will be sound of that is spoken and that contains elimination of like the entire like the team um that is that sound like a different mechanism. Example for the feeling stage like that one called it look that up your shop then it's another better. And at that point like and all this happening while Jahol is standing right in front of that park. The capture park is like the another that and at that point like park will end after like being stick lap and everything like I never before seen like side of that park like and you can jump at that point on that for example at that point then you can jump and this like man absolutely within the it's like within another that still I'm doing like example that will be taking off all that happening race on at that point on like path and that's a value result path slash of the narrative that I'm like so like the point of actually jump out that leave that up to see the place like that. So I think to bring that is through such a threat like I'm putting like eventually it's that the government path to there and like I'm looking that way in totally that disappointing that confidence to that place up to that this idiot will actually stood your mind and it should be totally close by to that person located the that jump and thing feels like the scenario that I'm like that way that jump out and feel that way making it finally making it to that and finding and finally making it to that just to get my letters that that's enough that I'm looking for and I'm looking still like I'm looking like number making it to like to get my letter even though jump whole he stream generation look like but still I'm looking that like jump not eliminating path but like insert that putting path into that any kind of like a tired of situation uh on the board itself such that's the scenario that I'm looking by staying in like this is the man in this land scenario that I'm looking so the time that quickly about that jump by the time that jump and team will be that making it to find its that just to be and integrating next in the way by then like I'm Captain Go that managing to that will be still be hiding from sort of a weapon with it and that with that he will be using to that to free himself from that my side of situation and everything that way part the moment that half will be free himself that part straight away warning that info and will be need that to be according to like in for like the configuration for like just one thing having very good and studio man and and all that and like that about like the information like about the happening that is in so like that way while Gunpo and team would be operating in like studio building up those name by then that info the when I'm fully aware about like jumping things that integration into that having made it and integrating it to get better so it was like can even go sort of also an understanding because yet like I'm even that can hold it only feeling that has difficulty in of that situation because like it's because of like the process of like the VIPs and like the last thing for my house more would be wanting would be to that for like the VIPs to like find out about like jumping integration and especially with like some like opinion like basically with that jump with like on those again having lost a lot of that again what was well like info that way we ending up in that this is the kind of like situation and info for people that up with top priority to that to that at least help to that eliminate that jump and team most likely I'm looking that info planning on like capturing jump and starting not to like eliminate jump but like eliminating all of the remaining team members of like jump with that absolute stealth without like the maybe finding out like that way that can possibly that maybe like telling some sort like an excuse to that like an excuse to like the maybe to like still pay for like input but like a just be work up to like late right down and like the story that the information of that just is like also like an interpretation of it that I'm working but like I'm doing even before all like I'm doing that jump totally with the phoning that was joy and I'm looking at example you can clearly revealing that the location coordinates of like this TMI that to that this joy and that way like Joy and like the police officer like and they are referring like the police officers there in the station because the that movement also speaking to that general at that point is like the scenario that is available. And that maybe by then like definitely that the police chief as well is showing up to the station at that point and like definitely at that point like I'm definitely that if the scenario being like maybe jump off that interaction with like the police officer that while giving like the location coordinates to like the police officer and would be the trying to like convince like the police officers there to like quickly send for like maybe at that point that the police officers there like not really jump off also like about that and those who like then not have any idea at all about like the food game. Especially also like about that and that way like jump off once again feeling that same thing that like of like not being able to like convince that Mr. Choice has been such well. It's also like about that I'm looking for. So that that way like I'm friend that phone call attempt of like jump off even after like revealing the actual location coordinates, which definitely at that point like Mr. Choice in you also hear about like that location coordinates like it's an art that I'm looking for. So like I can still like the police officers not believe that hope. And I'm like being once like the police chief that will be showing up to demonstration that like probably being shocked from seeing like the civilian uniform and like while like police officers will be at that point would be telling casually telling like the police chief for like just they are being crazy with like bunch of like crazy people have showed up to claiming to their is like in they are like people get eliminated and all that that to get them and they will be saying and basically at that point I'm different like definitely like the police chief probably realizing remembering and we the police chief that will be to play that way, like seeing its joy and like to gain uniform and at that point, on and like through publicity ordering them to like releasing joy and along with like play like like along with like the police chiefs like and different like joy as well as like and uh team of like police force that setting off from like the mainland to with them having like location coordinate like them setting off to like game idea is like getting into scenario that I'm definitely and like I'm just like maybe of like a another possibility that I'm looking for like scenario being especially with like the Portman Park having from the police officer having found out about that Joyce having eliminated like the dog of like Park like I'm different that Park might have been like that dog of that Park might have been extremely purchased the Park the minimum because like the minimum premises that like even like Park there were photos of like Park hanging out just like as well as like the Rakiti guy like mostly like Park might be living a solitude to like a solitary kind of like a life. So like I'm really like the dog that might have been extremely purchased to that Park might have been also the day definitely not together. So like with that Park finding out about that Sprite having eliminated that dog. Like and they down Park will be right now extremely and also like about together. So like Park will definitely will be having that will be setting up like a high priority right now to ensure like the elimination of that. So so like that's like Park maybe even before like Chanho would be that managing to that capture part like even before that like part maybe possibly even phoning one of like the individual connection one other individual connection to like the game in like the machine being like the mainland and would be given the odd to like basically to only go up to that station in the name of that the complaint or like to go up to the station and create a scene and basically that ways to that get into that and like Park only telling that person about like the name of that exact target that he has to like eliminate and basically that way that according to that Park for like anything that something like that person connect to like student like and like going up to like the station and creating a scene and that way like maybe attacking one of the levels of the book that and that way like getting put into like the same same station cell in which like joy as well to be present to also definitely upper like message joy is like but like message joy right now like to like attempt to like for like jump like while running off from like corridor. So I'm once like joy with gas and like I'm sort of like sense of just putting this joy into like the self. But then like the statements that you need to relate. So like I'm at that point, like I'm that person and seeing that students who will be showing up to like station with that absolute realistic intent to like eliminate this joy like I'm him. Only that way creating a team to like get himself put into like the same self in which like is joy at the like the station and that way like at that point like I'm looking at that up to the cell like I'm looking at him that only while like the police officers would be distracted like and like instantly attempting to like eliminate mischoice like the scenario that I'm going on. So like I'm going to like right as like mischoice and I'm protecting that way like so that after like managing to like managing so it's also like about that after but like after like it's only due to that the police chief like around that time like showing up to by sheer coincidence like showing up to like the station like and that way once like the police chief would be like realizing about like basically that what evidence connected to like the experience like and the issue of seeing it at that point I was like the police chief will be asking for like his story and that once he will be going up to like the cell in like station at that point like he will already seeing that it's probably joy whom like the other person in like that cell would be trying to like eliminate so like just to that police chief around like them making it some time and like them being into like face so at that with like also like things in scenario that I'm for the friends. For example, for like the police chief through like also like the interrogation of like that other person in like who at that point with the attempt would have attempted to like eliminate so like like the police chief through the information of that person like I'm would be getting even more further potential details connected to like the civilians as well. Connecting to like uh, connecting to that actual the actuality of like the civilian to that whole thing that Janghong like the past have right like convince like the police officer police chief about like civilian like all that like only social information like revealing that all that was like so to like the police chief like what I'm referring like to like the interrogation of that other guy like the police chief to show me finding out also that we might consider it at that time is that definitely totally different from that story. So that in guiding the that specific role of that basically working and your like people into that experience and that definitely won't be might not be at all your point certainly my experience because like definitely my experience is like that one the reasons might be for example like guy alone getting that role might be due to that like guy can take in that the second most likely being like the second chunk of that now might be the case to be another thing. So that the friend like by blood like and the different can actually like info might be that actual story product of like the activity it might be the case that you know different and according to my popular impression that I'm leaning more towards like it might have definitely been more towards in nam that might have started like this with in 1999 but like it might have been a totally different extremely old billionaire who might have began like the games in like 1999 Ilna might have been like the winner of like games in like 1999 might have been the case and like I'm still remember the mention that like Ilna like journey through like the way first games in like 1999 might have as like a game and it might have been an extremely realistic one so like I'm thinking that once like Ilna had won like the 1919 this game like I'm preferring at that point I'm just going like that person who might have been running the games back then, like, and I'm different back then, like, I'm thinking it might have been that person running the game that might have been also, like, taking the role of like, on management, might have been, like, if, definitely not the same, but, I'm looking like, yeah, might have been, that, he might have been extremely old at that point and might have even have health issues. So, like, he might have been afraid to, like, like, to create, like, a skill game and to perform a skill game might have been, like, long-term goal there been such like ultimate realistic goal which like he might have been only able to like achieve like by the time he had achieved by the time he had made enough money to be able to like, achieve like and he might have reached that nature of like all things might have been what kind of minimum so like that way like after like the 1999 against like what he might have done might have been um like he might have straight away like even after like William has won like the 1999 game like everything the person running the game might have seen that it met but like William and might have even like the rain for like the like conducting like the games to William might have been the case certainly might have been what kind of happened back then but we might have very so now at that point I'm looking like William might have been like the person that might have been and I was like handing over the reins to like Ilham without like really at all like the person who might have created like against might have sort of eliminated might have been what might have happened to like that was like health issue or something might have been what might have happened to Ilham so certainly so like Ilham might have only conducted like his games from 2000 might from the year 2000 might have been like the Ilham created and that point number like it might have more like it might be at that point that like it might have been in them that might have had like that sort in it might be like totally have subordinate to like the job of like the frontman, and so that like Ilham will like only focus on just like taking care of like the VIPs. Might have been like along the lines Ilham might have also like I'm saying like by sheer point in England like the winner of like the games in like the year 2000 as well might have played the game in an extremely realistic manner. That like Ilham might have been working. So like that way like I'm looking like after like the skin of like after like this game was over in like the year 2000 like I'm thinking like Ilham might have got something to get and might have given him like the role from the year 2001. But like I'm giving like it might have been like the winner of the game in like 2000 that might have been like Superman and Silna might have taken that back to like totally watch over next games and basically to like attend to like the VIPs most they will turn up. Well that might have been what happened certainly on the production. Also putting like in the total might have been terms of the putting like in like actual songs might have been like both info as well as like the Rajidi guys might have been the case. So like I'm saying the case of like info um computer like student before like from the student even before like Illa might have entered into like weekend as like a thinking candidates in like the 1999 student like even before that like Illa might have abandoned like in so might have been what might have happened in like the past and that way like Johnson's like parents might have eventually about info might have been what might have happened is certainly might have been so for the amount of dimension maybe and the second like exactly like how it might have been like a similar situation for kind of like a similar situation like that falling into a trap, a skill-free trap and basically that is the usual thing to the game which might have been happening with like or then after game candidate even including Kindam as well, while Kindam might have in a continent might have entered in like the second single candidate in like 1999 games as well might have been the case that you remember it. So that after giving birth to like in as well as like yeah. After giving birth to that in and then like the Rajini guy like and that Kindam's wife might have become created and uh, might have had that come to that come to be something I might have might have been what I had so like and like after that, like I'm something like might have been when like fortune create of like this movie like you might have to like art and you in as like one among like the multiple great number of like civilian candidates into this like pressure game while it was like he starting it in that 1999 and that point I'm looking that way that in terms like job and everything might have been further and like now might have into that and screen data screen touch kind of like a situation at that point I'm looking like in now might have ended up into like such a bossy kind of like situation where like in now might have not been able to like not only put up himself but also look after like it's like info as well as like the batting weight who might have been able to that and might have been the case definitely I'm correct what India might have done might have been India might have done that might have tricked that the child info as well as like the baby that the guy and but she might have been a baby and then that he might have told them to like basically in like the middle of the night like something that Illa might have taken them in front of that orphanage might have been almost that one and then that Illa might have told them to like stay there and Illa might have villains to make like that info as well as that uh, uh, daily activity guide by having that info on like the daily activity guide and like in the might have some reflection and might have left that area might have been what might have happened is the human brain. So like that is still up and that the people like the softness might have felt might have felt that sympathy towards that the amount that info and like holding like the daily activity guide that like they might have only system. And that way, like I'm looking that and that the radio like it is like might have ended up being part of it, or this might have been what had happened, and it might have been this time that like jump hope like parents too might have badly pondered their own baby, but like might have not been able to have baby, might have not like jump hope that might have not been able to like until that the female is to like some of the parents might have given to the legal not hope of like being that type of child, so like they might have sort of feel that of maybe and maybe might have the that to that about info might have been what might have happened might have been so like a product info and that they might have been that 3 million and that child that like I'm thinking like a thousand great delay that Janko might have been what might have happened certainly then all this might have happened that without much great delay after that organization might have taken in that info as well as like the baby that is guy might have been the case of Nina Spring. So like I'm thinking like the difference between that in guy as well as like Janko might be only that of that only maybe that few 1 month or something might be the case that we find again. Might the membership were like why like the child, still young child info as well as like the baby that you guys might have been feeling might have been only feeling more enough in like that combination with like the sudden disappearance of like in his like father and in the middle that like at that point I'm looking like maybe what like jump out of like that's like they might have sort of for like an option like definitely at that point like and maybe even more than like the baby strategy guy like anything that maybe it might have written that might have thought like and like jump out parents like because jump out long like and different that might have only that way came to the situation to like a lot that info might from like the orphanage might have been more than even from that they might have totally give info or that like choice and anything and like that they might have okay, that they might have ended up with like info totally them ending up prioritizing that usually even though it might have been like different for like info yet like due to that extreme young stage of like info and like for that like mechanically info might have decided might have totally abandoned for like that really guy in that orphanage and might have decided to like go along to like live a life of that to belong with like family of that examples that parents might have been for it happen and that way that for abandonment might have happened for like for that really guy on top of from first from that in them but like even after that like even in herself that an abandonment might have happened back when like info might have been tried might be like continuing for him. Might the remember where like info might have been extremely yet that to even have like sent to that even know what to do and like the clarity of all that and all that might be the case of the payment. Like the rem so like what might have happened then might have been a compliment for anything that enough winning external and to get them really the even that getting all that like the warm money as well as like that often paid from like the uh, Indians like handing off the reins to that Ilham and all that made them happen. So like at that point, like Ilham might have been totally feeling absolutely really glad that I'm looking like at that point Ilham might have at that point that might have said when head back to like the orphanage to like get back to circle like in her as well as like but the guy might have been the case that Ilham is like but like at that point I'm going to bring the police since like it wasn't like even a case where like Ilham had like I remember the reason where like Ilham had actually uh done the process of like basically of like handing off with like certain to like the orphanage like and definitely so like luckily I'm thinking like none of that people like the orphanage might have even believed in them and might have felt that in them was like crazy and that they like they might have probably accused in them of even seeing like the baby back in the guy at that point it's like scenario that I'm looking for right and like I'm remember it might be at that point that like Tina might have so me even realize that they that example. I mean like info has been like part of the family as well. So like in that definitely want like still want like Tina might have done might have been like Tina might have definitely might have in broken in and it's the right to like that one makes maybe like the night and night out like I'm looking like Tina might have managed to that run off and escape with like the not taking like the back to the guy from like the orphanage without getting caught. My dad what might have happened to me so like by then like I'm during that time period like after like Ilham had like left the Rajali guy when he was a baby at like the orphanage to like the point where like the Rajali guy had to like my dad had to like grow up alone after like in her well that might have got adopted by like in her well might have got adopted by like young was like parents like so like during this time like that absolute feeling of like feeling as if like he was like unwanted and basically and was like my work was like parent as well as like his brother. Like I'm feeling that like he might have ended up becoming a story. You can ask like for back in time might have grew up in like that orphanage like in William like he might have heard like people like talking about like basically how not only is that it's like brother as well have abandoned him like with their own play. So like it might be that's how that guy by the time that Ilham might have won like the 99 minutes games and might have came back to like the orphanage for input as well as that the like the guy like including by then like that guy might have had that feeling absolute feeling of like as if like he's like okay I'm more that he's not important at all. Totally certain things might have been what might have happened might be injured. So that way like I'm doing that enough might have probably taken that. that will be like of me. And that are source that then like I'm looking like in might have been living the the strategy like since then like might have been the case in the manufacturing yet like I'm telling that would will from of like in it's that it had the content list had changed to like the purpose was like during like in like April of like the 19 it might have been the might have probably since then like in like yeah to like the point about like an had turned into like was an extremely limited and thingy center gap. So might have that even behind this thing that behind even like saving that the right to be there, taking the right to be there on like of nature well might have been solely for like but like in getting that terrain of like running the experience like at that point like still have and that event back and like around like 20 years back like from like the 20 games to like the my time period like really so at least still in that might have been easily to a certain extent to might have been reached to like the in that somebody having getting all the things all that money and all that power of like running like games and everything like if I'm at that point it might have with and with like enough like women some the things like coming to like suffer uh moving down like experience of like going through like the environment to get like at that point I was like I might have only changed to a person who was like who only cared about like the students and who only cared about like so we were running like the students and really ensuring that it we in I'm able to like perform like the range of like the students to the uh, children like so like how would be the lines that of like a person that you know the kind of like a desire in them might have had at that point might have been the case of even so like that way like solely that thing that like in them might have uh solely that brought back and taken the back in might have been the case but might have been so like I'm like so that way like India might have kept on, Simpson might have kept on connecting like the students from like the year 2000 and like 2000 and everything. So like I'm sure the winner of like the students in like the year 2000 might have been that India might have probably make a made him like given him like the position of like man might have been the women of the like and into my that men as well might have been around like the same age as that of like enough that and so this definitely also might be the range what like it is that that then when that way like as time passed like the Latin guys might have grew up like totally knowing about like the senior danger to games and things and with like the basic lands like so that they growing up like basic land like that might have also like that would be like to like end up with the video might have been what might have happened certainly on the thing. So like I'm when that eventually in with that afterwards and then to like eventually pass on this like reels of like running with students to like the like and like even from a young age like in might have also brought them like the lucky guy to watch like the students from like that student weddings from that last period and looking like the lucky guy might have worked like watching like the students should place and like that as well might have probably sort of prevention for like the lucky guy might as well and might have turned to failure. It might have been what might have happened to me so like the lucky guy might have been so soon desperate to like that way as like the lucky guy might have to work and reach like teenage like at that point I'm looking that the lucky guy might have been desperate to like totally take off and like go on like just building that like exactly the way like the lucky guy wants and all that might have been the case that you can so like maybe something like the lucky guy teenage like and he might have been typically like asking info enough to like totally handle like very significant but like I'm doing at that point like enough what enough might have told to like the criteria enough might have told to the lucky guy might have been that is you know for like enough to like pass forward pass like the range of the experience to like the lucky guy like the lucky guy has to like first burn that process of like being like around like experience or by like winning that by participating in the decision of like a teaching candidate and like winning just to winning that the you can like going up for at least 1 year of the you get on the line of like that reveal at such a villain quick reveal that in that might have made that like in the like question so which like like even though that by the lucky guys like mindset might have escaped up to like the point of like the lucky guy enjoying like witnessing and watching like the games and everything. Uh, and the eliminate speculation that games and everything like still like the lucky guy might have also had that one like still might have said this to like the lucky guy that like for like to that take over that Korean and from like the citizens from Finland like so that guy has to like earn his right become like a winner of that this year that is 1 year. So like at that point of that guy might have felt that absolute fear uh, to do that and like that fear might have kept like that guy from that actually female to like participate as that Indian candidate. Uh, might have been what might have happened in the selections that day. Once that you guys might have like once that and might have seen that fear and once that you guys might have told in them that is the that he wants to like around like the students or like we can't like participate and play like students. Since then like I'm something like in them might have came to the seen like that you guys as like an absolute failure might have been more like recommend that like once again that written more like before faculty guy might have felt like strongly unimportant and unwanted might have been the case that we might have been so like maybe some of the because like things that maybe like the faculty guy might have been frustrated seeking that attention and appreciation of like in to like the point where like the faculty guy might have favored to that got as like a to game worker and give that way like to that way to like improve like in like something like that I will might have put on like the renewal comment everything and might have like a game of hoping that like that might improve in to like the point of that into the lack of mind changing to like the point of that in probably handing over like the ring of that running the experience to at like they might have been what like what the guy might have expected but like understand what might have happened will be like even after like that the guy might have worked for years or like a game of like I'm very still that in the might have been still seeing that the Rakhi guy that kind of absolute failure. And that in the might have still not changed to that stand that will be that is the that Rakhi guy wants to like on like the games that is that the Rakhi guy has to like win become like the winner of the games at least 1 year and then until then that that in the might have sold as a actually and in terms of the might have hold the Rakhi guy that I'm inventing like is like an absolute failure to in that would be along the line and then embarrassment to like in that would be along the line to like and in that might have go like guy. So like I'm saying like in like the path like the I think that they're in like the whole roughing all that kind of like game between like Sanjay as well as that guy like it means like I think like the and produced that basically like the moment that that guy when important was like when he was networking the oxygen was like really I think like along the line like I think that and within like Sanjay would be all connected in such a manner consummate them it might feel like it's definitely trying to so like might have been that so it might have been when like the guy got a taste of power while working as like a student like conducting that point might have been when like maybe that actually guys might have felt important and everything is definitely my thing. You get like a like the whole condition of like in on like each year like in the while like that guy might have been witnessing uh, a single student can like becoming like to win a student each year like and different the other guys might have been feeling like more and more extremely frustrated and jealous of like the winners of like the student each year might have been the case especially with and this will be topic connected to how extremely insecure and jealous like the actually guy has got towards like Sanyon by playing that Sanyon and Fakili guy has played like that or question role like kind of like a game between that where like the Fakili guy like was like only that was kind of like different kind of like has like he was definitely jealous of like Sanyon's like Sanyon having won like the game from like 2020. So like I'm the like definitely should all be connected to something maybe the case definitely might be the so the member permission, so referring that the person who might have want that the student from that year 2000 and might have did that way might have a point that I mean that might have been given like the position of like the comment by in from the year from like the students that took place from that year 2001 on the like and that in under that when upon the member permission might have been around like the same stage as that like might have been and by the time like by the year 2013 like I'm certain he might have started that have all sorts of health issues might have been more than that. So like I'm definitely remember that like the scenario might have even one like 2013 could be about like over and like in that particular like I'm certain that even at that point like I'm certain like the graphic that the poor package guy then at that point might have been totally afraid and might have been of that like playing like the Squid games and basically attempting to be a winner and taking the role of like the and to from like that way like suddenly the Dragon guy still might have had that absolute fear and hesitation. This might have prevented him even all the way back in like 2013 as well from that playing civilian as like a civilian. That might have been the case that so like and during this time like when Ilham health issues might have been getting slowly getting worse and worse. And Ilham might have totally at that point might have totally given up on like the Rakitic guy. And like that might have been an instance where like an extremely desperate and race that Ilham might have totally specifically like shouted out maybe at like the Rakitic guy and might have fought an absolute failure for like this all these great number of years like the Rakitic guy getting all this great number of years and still like not being able to connect like guys to not being able to get over that fear of like playing like the game food games like taking part in like shifting of like cooking and like and such an incident might have happened and like then remembering that might have been like the 2013 season or might have been when still might have decided to that might have been when like Finland might have totally decided to totally search for like input and they need to have like info take over like the names and like by throwing infos to by searching and finding info and regardless of like the state in which like info's life might reach from that point like they totally for example like totally that app system like totally destroy except like all the rest of the candidates that who are you are making that you might have been totally the advantage of them that in my tournament to decide going that way to find to search for only at that point to like search for and find info and then to like the scroll info like and that way to like eventually that way to like look into that experience might be along the lines that Ilham might have most likely decided by like once like the 2013 situation was over, Ilham might have been going through like Ilham's health condition might have been getting worse that way. Might have been the case that Ilham framed it. I'm going to bring it this time like and like Ilham might have began to like what like basically and that way it might be during this time that like Ilham might have ended up having one of like the clients uh, at like the workplace that of like the job set of the job that the basically that like info had like basically that way it might be during that time that and like Ilham might have ended up becoming like one of the clients that like that job of info might have been the case that Ilham was like Ilham might have started to like start to make this move to like focus on like historically like to like that game to like to like the students even back then might have been the case that leak might have been like that way and but in like 20 in like the months that the 2014 to game of like and like things might not only some in now something like things might not only got then work for like in where like I'm like after like the 2014 to game was over like and thinking like the situation for like in might have been that the person that might have that might have been holding like the process of like the appointment just like might have given like all the way from like the year 2001 to uh, until that point might have ended up that getting eliminated due to that health issue or like or something might have been the case that humans can so definitely that way that with like in them situation at that point might have been that in them health getting even worse and basically with like the ferment was one thing and was that in them had pointed at like the ferment as well was like serving us like from as well family goals and that in that situation like like India might have got got that for it and that India might have decided as for like in next year it's like 2015 to like have like the strategy guy that that take the role from that and got that like from that for like uh for like the year 2015 might have been along the lines that for like India might have so like I'm considering like the year 2015 in which like it was only revealed that like the like info had participated in like the game in candidate in like the year 2015 to like already revealed and in which like info had been seen like the winner like and that 2015 school game like another the format might have been like the that might have been the case and like I'm that Python like I'm putting that the league flat. Python like I'm putting that in now might have handles that share screen or confidence when it comes to that when it comes to that info might have been the case of the film of the producer like now might have been actually or confidently that button as actually info to be that when it comes to coming like the winner of the 2015 experience solely to that info team in now might be around that way like illa might have and or man might have seen so definitely when the illa might have already looked at the in front of like some of the Latin guy, and that way might have done like Latin guys. Might have been also the case that we had again, which so that way like I'm putting that in like the 2015 games that might have been the Latin guy that might have been like working as like when I like the Latin guy might have done like absolute maximum and might have probably been to eventually end up having that info get eliminated in like the students due to like the things that like Ina might have do all the things that Ina might have told about like info in a good manner to like actually guys taking that up with the and might have been the case. So like the actually guys who and like like Ina might have even told that the actually guy that they that info will definitely win like the games against and if we want info will be winning like the 2015 to gain that like Ina will be straight away giving him the sort of like the front man and then like eventually one like Ina uh, talks away like at that point like definitely Inam would be ensuring that by then like that will be by then like that info like account like the students from that point on. Yeah, along the lines and looks like in an excited and joyful and in a keenly sensitive man of life like in a so like that actually died. That might have been the case that Needham trained before like the 2015 game might have began. Definitely my so like to like the 2015 game I can bring like that actually died in like the role of like the on my might also big hope and might have even maybe to a much extent and another match might have done with that maximum to ensure that like info doesn't makes it to that become like the winner of the city might have been the case in the yet like I'm trying solely due to that info so what that we haven't skills self like and maybe after like I'm getting adopted by the host like parent like and person like involved myself have a liking towards like martial arts and all that like and that way like I'm doing like involved even that then myself like had like skills good skills in like martial arts and like might have been age and everything might have been the case which might have helped like info a lot in his like journey in like the different might have been the case certainly at the end of the whole definitely that way that regardless of all the attempts of lateral guy to have info not make it to that they can get the winner of that 20 get them thinking for myself that way struggle to play CC might have struggled to play into that the strange to still eventually make it to become the winner of the 20 game might have been what ended up happening but we got the play and like that jealousy within that the strategy guy something that having that fear and preventing him from taking part in like that way never being able to let them to develop the experience and have that is still like having that over the years all these that not only all these strangers like witnessing all these strangers become like not of like this situation, but also that having to like witness that like as well to whom like invoke to whom like related to die by friends like might have had this experience jealousy solely due to like in might have been the case of Nina Pringle. So like to see that so by then that absolute jealousy might have been of like the lucky guy might have seen like info that to the winner of like certain games to game as well as like straight away replacing like the lucky guy from like straight away from like certain games to game almost like info to replacing the lucky guy as like the winner as like the position by taking the position of the format might have been what might have happened is something might have again the man generation that one like was all in the ended up becoming like the winner of like the 2015 students at that point that might have been going with later and that was like might be at that point that like Ilna might have were like the lucky guy of like might have been present in that group where like Ilna might have joined them excitedly might have like so in hope so like basically that might have made that reveal that like in none of that it was that pop and all that like separately and might have even introduced like the marketing guy at that point in front of like info and by telling info that this is your by telling info that it will be by introducing like the marketing guy to that info in like an extremely the manner of it and the manner of it like that the marketing guy did it's like in this like failure of a good along the right term like an extremely uh, consecutive manner like in that might have even introduce like the marketing guy to like taking for might have been the case the minimum brains and at that point I'm like the marketing guy might have like taken off his like from man mask and I'm looking like at that point definitely even info might have been like focused like journey in that even to games like and something like it might have been an extremely different one solely which like might have been turned into that an even more thicker journey of like a path for like info to become like children of literally 15 billion solely due to like that guy while in like the role of like the format having that absolutely might have been what might happen. So like I'm different like definitely at that point like info on seeing like the Daki guy like and taking off his mask like and like info and even info realizing that like the Daki guy is like was like further like even at that point like info might have had like had a certain extent of like an anger and rage with him towards like the Daki guy for like making info's like journey through like the 2015 games that being extremely difficult to like and not only that but like info is realizing how badly the Daki guy had like probably attempted to eliminate info through info like journey in like second years and all that like info by then might have been totally aware of all that and yet like I'm sort of like info might have probably had like that a side of like info that might have been totally seen like in the might have been totally happy to like have a brother and like father at that point like info was like info is like while living as like in like example like but like examples and like family like at that point like still fact that like info was like that feeling of that is that info might have even back then might have been still the straight to that fine that actual parents might have been the case definitely my case in the work like I'm something that maybe examples that parents might have shown that like for difference in how they be treating that how they will be in their approach towards that example as well as info might have been clearly visible for like info at that point that enough that way like info even from down time in like the past like has been moving growth might have been really wishing to be able to like reunite with like info like accept that might have been the case that even so like I'm putting that way up then the winners of the different things within that such a reunion might have happened and I'm looking at so there might have been that side of the info that might have been extremely happy and joyful during that point and since like during that time, like info had also lost that info like but as well. So like including that at that point for info might have felt home at that point after like winning like the 22 games and like meeting in them as well as like the value guy might have been the case that for info at that point he might have felt that like as if like it's like only family at that point might have been the case that he went to and also for impressions when that even before like the 2016 games even began like I'm looking that info might have been that might have been part of this like info as like how badly like the lucky guy enjoy like working as like from and as like a game worker and all that like so such a job of like the candidate elimination and everything. So like I'm saying definitely it might have been consciously like a punishment that like info after like in them might have like given like the question of that comment to info at that point like might have been consciously a punishment that like info might have given to like the Lakini guy of like basically most likely at that point might have been when like the Lakini guys like job might have been as like a student worker might have been shifted from like the year 2016 might have been when that Malagiri guys like job might have gotten shifted to basically giving like the role of like the Vasily guy of like going like speaking candidates and civil rights by playing like the Vasily game might have been what might happen in the team. So like until then like that role might have been serving by some other person comes to like might have been the convention. So that definitely that might have been a punishment to like the Latin guy that like might have given that might have resulted in like the Latin guy becoming the Latin guy and getting that vote and that job which like the Latin guy become might have thoroughly dislike that job of that was playing the Latin of the like playing the Latin and like the candidate into that again and giving the town and all that. Definitely like the friends. So like the Latin guy might have found me just like that job to like the experience. So like I'm different like even while Sanjon had like basically while playing that whole Russian roulette kind of like game with like the Latin guy. But like at that point like that the respect of like Sanjon to like basically even calling like the Latin guy like the relevant and all that like my job only like the Latin guy way more than like Sanjon to like like might have been the case that we by the middle of the day. Due to that, the snack for back to that like according to my personal realm, like might have been like definitely my experience. Due to that, the strategy that while playing that thing, Russian format, like thing with like Sanjon, like we would like that, or a bit like Sanjon, how much, how as like how for like about time he felt important was like when he was working as like a studio worker, like if he so like that guy who only had the feeling of that any important only felt important while working on. game was like maybe due to like both like punishing like once he might have been forced given forcefully given like an assigned like the job of that like and like at that point once again like he might have been felt unimportant might have been like so maybe like himself not being like eliminated might have been like the case definitely might have been uh, uh, which like he was able to do while working as a single worker, which couldn't while working as like the Lakshmi guy, like the Lakshmi guy role might have been like the case. So like considering during that point, like considering like the situation might have been extreme for like the Lakshmi guy. Due to like once again that feeling of like nothing not being involved and like probably putting up and like reaching the thing like the Lakshmi guy might have been like the feeling might have been so like I'm like the guy in that mind that the Lakshmi guy always have while trying to like do like the secret candidate into like the into like the game by playing like the strategy game that and that behind that might have been that absolute sadness and like feeling of frustration within like the strategy guy like the like strategy guy might have been hiding that in that time with like fates might have been the case that we remember game. I was very impressed that like Simon had basically for like three around like 3 years I think like basically after like since the day that Simon had chosen to like not board that flight since that day one of like Simon has used that with like reward money to like compensate off and bring it out like big games for like around like 3 years I think that was during this time like like eventually info my got fed up like Simon to the point of like info might have decided to like me eliminate and get rid of Sanjon might have been the case of Newman. Yeah, like I'm like info might also be wanted to only do that through having like Sanjon who's like enough of like the in this game to like hopefully lose a game and then to like how Sanjon get like eliminated. Remember the because of like those 3 years that like Sanjon had kept on saving like and trying to like stop and bring out like the game like and during that time especially like that whole attempt of like all that effort of like Sanjon began thrown after like phone call between like Sanjon and I think like info basically up like the moment like Sanjon was like about to board plane or like in that airport I think like so like during that point where like Sanjon had had challenged like the and fight like info ideology which will be something that info will be seen upholding and like will be like seen as like that absolute hope and the right thing that when Sanjon had challenged that ideology like info deep down might have felt that absolute disturbed kind of like feeling and like might have only might have only like present by Sanjon had proposed and tried to like expose like impose like ideology, the flaws in like impose ideology with that Sanjon ideology through that confidence that feels like I said when the impose takeout might have felt this might have been the case that we remember so like so only get rid of that Sanjon and but when like who might have been actually genuine about like while telling Sanjon like just go on the play might have been the case with so like and so, like since that after that like 15 20 years of like Sanjon fight to that capture info the frontman info and like bring out CMs and everything like I'm just towards the end of the third year like I'm like info actually might have been something what fed up with like Sanjon to the point of that like info might have until that point like info might have only felt that basically literally Sanjon might get tired of like searching for like info and audience like find info that like Sanjon might really give up for like ideology and one with like just to like bring out like brilliance and like capture like manager in my game and maybe info might have for until that point but like I'm going it might be like towards the end of like that third year like I'm looking that info might have probably felt that they along the lines of like Sanjon definitely has no plans at all to like give up until like Sanjon they catch up and for like so we along the lines of like it might have felt strongly to like it might have been obvious like at that point might have been like at that point like info might have decided to like definitely get rid of that Sanjon and then so also to do that like I'm thinking like info might have probably came to the conclusion to like probably use like the dark guy that basically just like might have been the case definitely and info might have only felt that you need to have this as like a chance to eventually have like because like maybe info it down might have had that like problem towards like the luckily guy that like even while info might have not sold to like the luckily guy on the outside like they found like info might have wanted like the luckily guy to like because like info as well might have by then might have had his like mindset and everything turned crazy to the point that info as well by then might have been thinking that basically that was like even until that kingdom uh, final boss like Ilham might have been that intentionally might have been calling the lucky guys as like an average failure for like not playing that this news might have been the case definitely that point. And I'm speaking to my to the impression that like Ilham even playing like the game. The fourth students in like second year again like Sandra that as well might be certainly not really like enough never just wanting a taste of like how like the student feels that like Inna might have played like the normal Chilean Sandra, but like naturally it might have been like Inna might have getting more to that Inna might have been like the winner of like the very first Chilean in like 1999, but and so this when Inna might have not played like the Chilean that often that uh might have been the case. So like I'm thinking so many years passing and like in a just like in a situation as well might have been like Inna totally feeling as if like he won't have much time to live due to lack of like health conditions getting worse. I get on the lines like in a mega so like I'm looking like before that like walking down to like once again face like to get the face of like experience on the game might have been the actuality of like the reason for like in now like is playing that Marvel against that Kanye in like the 2020 season might have been also the case definitely back in the game. So definitely that as well and that maybe in might have also another student thing then behind doing that as well, which might have been to that way that have that the Rakhi guy. So at that point as well might have been within like the meeting might have been watching that decision. So definitely to for that to be like a motivation for like the Rakhi guy for like to make to for that act of like in playing like the entering and playing like the Marvel Studios with like Sanjon so they say that again like basically to either have that to be like a motivation for like the country guy or to either to have that to see that act like in them to cause like even more like an embarrassment or like a feeling of failure to like the really guy and that is like force him to like as like a push to like probably force him to like one facing like this again like the next year might be along the lines maybe like there might have been a certain intention behind like multiple intention behind that in playing like experience in like the year 2020 of technology. Might have been also the case like also like about the definitely that definitely before even in the might have even also told info like basically that once again that like I feel like how he's like probably disappointed. I feel like how he's kind of probably proud of like info at least like probably disappointed in what he might have gone as like a failure as like the first batch joined and like that and he might have maybe even made like info promise to him that basically that like eventually that info will be ensuring that like the actually guy plays like the games might have been around the lines of that final vision of that thing that might have been was also like about to be better. So like that way like I'm suppose like I'm still in now as well uh might have been that even by Illa might have called like might have been calling the Tabaki guy as like okay still what Illa might have been believing that like it might have been like the fear of the Tabaki guy might have been a single factor like preventing like the Tabaki guy from becoming like the winner from playing and winning like teams might be along the lines like even Ilham might have been or confident man might have believed that basically if like the actually guy plays like then definitely he will be ending up becoming the winner of like that UFC series. To be along the lines that overconfident like Ilham might have even had towards all the way to this like last just like even that Kimbo as well might have had like Kimbo as well might have only believed in like the skills of like the Latin guy and everything and might have also really clear that it was the fear of like the Latin guy and that cuts off. So like maybe due to this reason like and like one like towards the end of like the year that one like eventually info might have been spread up in like Sanjon and like might have decided to like eliminate Sanjon like and that info might have decided to do that through like a game between like Sanjon and like the Latin guy so that like the Latin guy will be getting like an actual phase of that play actually being in like the games and playing in like the game like those Captain Ball like kind of like and that might be how we get the whole Captain Ball like kind of that game between like Sanjo and like the Lucky guy it happened to definitely multiple image and yet like so like I'm going to still like a place in that card of like the club club location of like needed point with like for like Sanjong and it also means that if we even by placing that card giving that card to like the like guys still I'm like might have firmly with that as well or confident might have agree with that like there only absolutely no need for that card that basically the league Sanjong was like might have had that feeling of different as properly as well as that as what or concept on like so that the guy that actually that the guy would be defeating Sanjong in like the option role that same and we would be like Sanjong that way will we get any of the eliminator fight like the Latin guy that day like the only film of Sanjong to like only that network which state of info from giving to me along the line to inform my or completely might have been the case of so definitely that way the Latin guy embracing to Sanjong and the eliminator might have been such an absolute shock to that info because the situation might have been from the situation might have been from both of the shock really who might have been Latin guy might have been the case and that well happening so daily to Sanjong. So it was that point might have felt that those praise towards Sanjong and might have been experience of my to deliver that absolute revenge of an absolute experience suffering to Sanjong might have been the case in the French and number it might have been so hard for if might have talked found out about so that left the Latin guys elimination by Sanjong I'm it might have been at that point that I'm thinking that absolutely that's again one Sanjong that info might have still of mind definitely have to create the situation where Sang Jones would be ending up entering into the will be ending up the time and will be ending into 2024 games and in the 2024 games in silver that absolute strange increments of suffering to Sang Jones all the way to getting Sang Jones all the way to the 6 game in 2024 game which is Sang Jones to ensure that Tangan doesn't get eliminated until Tangan makes it to and Tangan goes through that loop suffering all over again, all throughout all 6 games until Tangan will make it to again in the 2024 season and that way to gives Tangan that false hope as well as that Tangan might be able to achieve his goal and everything but at that point for info to face Sanjong to fight up against to play to game against Sanjong. In while I think only watching that info only planning on getting everything to Sanjong and basically that way that will be next to according to selecting into Sanjong that it was a person running the game and it's a person that Sanjong had been separately for about 3 years had been info and to reveal all this to Sanjong before the game between info and Sanjong even while the other only one can then with that to see kind of pop up and with that absolute frustration trying to bring down info and failing and basically that way at that point for info to the top is have to prevent it by defeating Sanjo in the series and basically by eliminating Sanjo both as a man of and get that absolute revenge especially for elimination of the Latin guy and nothing is against might have been along the lines things actual plans might be and might have been the case as well as for what might have happened what might be that there the multiple situations in and the bond between and game or that guy and all that might have been against the unique might have been that would be it might have been only what don't had educated the strategy guide in the rushing towards game and basically for the strategy guide of eliminator it might have been only at that point that I'm different one that info had softly heard found out about the Latin guy having eliminated by Sanjo maybe only at that point that Info might have even decided to and might have decided to have Sanjo end up and we do a thing to the 2024 studio to pop that up to something else and eventually elimination of Sanjo might have been the case of another print and maybe only at that point that Info might have straight away as part of impose revenge on Sanjo Info might have straight away only at that point might have straight away targeted young day as well and might have for might have made this move to do a jump day, someone to run jump day as well into the Syrian condition because might have been what might have happened especially might be very average. So that way the elimination of jump day was part of Syrian rebellion and get info that even not eliminated not eliminating kind of would be the league or part of prevents kind of a suffering that info would be as part of plan after the couple to Sonia. Definitely to have Sonia choices of ideology would be the sole reason for that for the game being the way it is and it might be part of also revenge that the boss game the being elected or being the way it is and Sandon that the moment Sandon had destroyed his own ideology and had eliminated people even at that point I'm people might have been villainously white watching all that info might have been totally been celebrating might have been from within might have been the case. The league also might have been it might have been sort the 300% when Sun don't about playing that whole Russian to thing with the Latin guy the fact that Sun don't have scored that the guy that's relevant to him and basically at that point that actually that a good extent of something for like the rugby guy might have been assisted with like on that point for throwing like the rugby guy for 11 and basically as for like not even caring about like the rugby guy and that's the frontman that's the person running like the games like the frontman that like alone that can't one even cares about that. First of all, the fact that like that all that dialogue was coming from a winner, a previous winner of the game, expected in this game like Sanjay. That effect would be what would have lacked. Even looking at Sanjay effect would be might have been creating that absolute security within lack as the backing guy who might have really wanted to wish that he could play like serious and the winner of the series, but might have been nothing not been able to see it because lack fear and might have and due to lack in lack ever since lack and lack ever since like the past I don't remember friends about having repeatedly of like the Latin like of danger and all that as well as well as like the fact that like Sanjon even like probably giving so much importance to like the front man who put like info to around the members will be like the Latin guy like on the phone as well being like the winner of the 2015 to game like that guy absolutely most likely having that as well Chelsea he was not only Sanjon at that point but like also he was like info like well who like the fact that info not never been like win the games in like 2015, but like the fact that Ilham is like someone who like later on like the guy might have so badly wanted to represent like the being proud of like the like the guy like that person like basically like the like info being like instead like being like the one that like Ilham like so proud of and like to an info even getting to like around like the games and everything. So definitely there will be that after consequence of the then types of work I think guy connecting to like info like from many info to such experience even back during that point while like Sandon was like falling by doing that whole person go like that kind of like thing that came that really when Sandon was like repeatedly falling that actually guy relevant like that might have been like that great extent of like hidden extreme suffering and pain going on like the actually guy which might have even representing like the actually guy who might have from himself to that to gain that up like confident like body language and everything like that still that very thing that we got at that point like really during like the game like during that like lot of game the like run like with like I mean work alone like this like that that bad guy like so stimulate up on like outside like totally crumbling and basically totally like insecurities and everything that basically shown and that basically that vulnerabilities that all of that like is and usually being far too visible for like someone might have been due to this that extreme extent of like pain and suffering which like the sun through these words of like Sanjong that like the guy might have been going through kind of into that the entire life of like the guy what that guy might have been the things the peak might have been the main fundamental system for the in that photo of like the government part with like the guy is that much joy has found at like perform that the actuality of the truth behind that photo might have been that like it might have been a scenario where like it might have been that the Natalie guy that might have the really wanted that photo the like farm solely due to that definitely look like definitely the part that the government part will be like the winner of like one of like the earlier students maybe that during that the earlier years of like 2013 or 14 conflict might be like the case definitely might be real so definitely my comprehension for like definitely there might have been that for like for faculty guide there might have been that extension theory of things complex towards like the board member. So that I'm feeling like it might have been that it might have been like the faculty guide that might have been might that might have so necessarily wanted like that photo but like to take that photo like the faculty guide just like the board member might have been the case of the police magistrate and definitely and like the government part as well might have the knowing as well would be that totally might have been totally knowing that like the Latin guy has like the product of like info and as like someone who has never played like the civilians or like even one tech experience that this might be one thing that like an maybe even part might be well I'm fully aware of might be the case definitely my contribution yet like I'm thinking that a part might be probably the way part might have seen that yeah. So they like start might have seen like the starting guy might have been around like that's it like something that could be along the lines like upon looking for that in a trade even though in a trade man still I'm looking like that might be like the way that path might have used like the starting guy certainly might have been very contract. So that might be the reason for like path of searching that and like having that photo of him with like well that will be like in the like house basically and like the fact that like about like the sort of path with like info like that might be due to like path like kind of open towards like info as to like the unique info like running like this video like it might be through like path or like having this like the way path will be doing that info will be as like sort of like will be like that or probably kind of like what between that path and what path towards like info might be the case and it might be like the reason for like paths of the like searching that sort of like in with like info and like having that sort of as well at the same when he is that we have to the government operation for this in that part like government of they might have been seeing that the actually guys in that as like a part of and some kind of like might have been the case so that the ensuring that the elimination of the Kanakini guy might have been distinguished shopping from like the government part as well, not only info but also the like about my father as well. Might have been the case especially and like Park might have been desperate to like get that absolute event on that sample like Park might have had that absolute it's like and like that absolute friend of have to like get about that absolute something to that sample for like eliminating for like eliminating like the Naguli guy. So like I'm looking like even the Park as well soon would be also like happen like becoming like the winner of like the game like we can talk about so like games like I'm looking like as well might have had such like mindset totally change and like basically like the point of like I'm looking exactly that how info and like enough might have want for like the likely guy like I'm like maybe as well might have badly want like the likely guy to like eventually be able to like get over like fear and basically to simply have like the likely guy be able to like play the games and become like the experience and become like the winner and use that way to eventually like or like the likely that way to like achieve like ultimate dream and like be able to achieve like ultimate dream and from like experience for like the background to be eventually passed from like info to like the likely guy like this as well and like due to that like bond between that which might have existed with like a thought and from like kind of like the way that in which like Park might have seen like the battery guy like Park as well. This might be what like Park as well might have wanted for like the battery guy might have been also the case definitely right. So like the layer one that Park only has it down in the hand after like finding out probably finding out about like the second net manager and Park might have had like that absolute extreme where the job should like get revenge on like not only Chandran but also since like Jungle is like um totally on like it's like totally working alongside with like Sandon and since like Papa did only other like including like Papa really not having that as good and it's as with race within him and as with that like get revenge on like even as well might be the case definitely Michael Syria like the minimum right now with like the bottom bar right now using it weapon and eliminating that jungle steam that definitely right now so the still for like in the jungle steam that one person like I'm still providing that one person who has to send up and have that who was like sharp enough to like have that suspicion on that part like I'm kind of still managing to like survive but with like certain extent of injuries effective now that I'm or like I'm familiar I'm the like the person that will be stopping from like a rampage right now on like the team example which example is then the supplement like I'm like with that app itself from behind to be that like the using is like Japan and like injuring part and like still I'm definitely example to be definitely ensuring to like definitely not eliminate part definitely because of like that crucial information as to like where like this Indian island is that being with that part holding that key to like find out like the location of this game island will be right now with like after like having the conversation and with like the sound of like weapon like the book and everything that will be part of all this for like example that like I'm telling that the example so now like none of like totally example even though I'm trying like example will be like injuring that part like I'm saying like still example ensuring not to that eliminate part and like example totally managing to like catch up part and like totally stop before like will be that eliminating all of like the team members of like example right now like looking at it like I'm going so yeah like I'm looking at all the remaining team members of like example in that goal except for that single team member who all the way was sharp enough to have that sufficient of a if alone like and then will be managing to like survive but still to like that extent of the injury like scenario that are feeling on those and so like I'm doing it will begin as well as like example that will be three like threatening more than threatening part like I'm just like him a badly injured him as well as like Janko who won't be getting to at all. Then to this what I'm trying to be making it to like the William Island first select person after that. William person right now is for like in the case of like Captain Coach like at like team B of Janko. Who have like Captain Coach like I'm definitely in like Captain Coach like at like I'm like in the peak of like the team B getting eliminated like the scenario that I was so like even by the time like Janko could be like stopping like the rampage that part and like capturing part and stopping part like will understand that by the time like Janko will be realizing about like the danger that like the team B is in and like by the time like Janko will be quickly falling that to want like the team B that and that by the like understand that either like the person picking up like the phone screen captain go or like understand that the phone ringing of like one of like team members sponsoring me and like Captain goes straight away picking up the phone and then be throwing it full like the seat like the scenario that I'm looking for the and okay. So maybe the impressions for like Park and Captain Go might be having secretly having like a strong bond of friendship between them that like definitely Captain Go like I'm looking like will be showing up to like will be all back in that this board will be eventually showing up to like the game hidden to like save Park. It's like the scenario that I'm looking was like definitely Captain was going to appear as well to guess and that definitely things like Jungle and 15 badly want to make it to like game and they won't be able to like eliminate like Park. And since like Park is like the only person that they won't be able to like eliminate Park the year and of that's a content that I'm referring that Captain Paul might be having like something like Captain Paul certainly that due to that bond or like I'm doing Captain Paul that instead of that focusing on his own escape like I'm like Captain Paul that basically deciding to like show up to like the Syrian island to solely to like save Park and to like stop and eliminate jump off and things. Down the lines of like the Egyptian army that I'm looking at, because like was for the front member of the recording like you know like Park would be stopped like I'm like done a phone call from jump to like the phone of like one of like the team B team member uh will be happening for happening on like jump. So like seeing that phone call to back and like Captain Go straight away will be come to like the conclusion that basically so Captain Go has been so that like will become to the conclusion that like so that the bottom pump has been stopped. So and has been captured by Jacob and T would be along the lines of like a conclusion that like Captain Go will come down to so like that absolute sorting them to that state pump at all costs like I'm bring that under the like Captain Go that way that probably getting forced to like this be a minus just like any not that is the good that the human tension right now as well as the version part right now telling them those that he was supposed to get eliminated a long time ago and they used like the Jackson that had given him a second chance let him quickly like this pattern would be totally repeating where like people will be totally saying that the previous that winners of like the Squid Games would be like the majority of them might be totally thinking that like it was like the Studians that had saved the men in Act 20, like it might have definitely been like the Studian itself that might have destroyed like their initial peaceful life, but like in childhood one of them was being edited might have been or like in the majority of like the extended episode being edited basically like the majority of them might have been like that might have been like created like their life might have been like that aspect that might have been destroyed like they might have the majority of them might have had like stable job and everything and a well going career in like their life at one point in like the past which might have been all sort of destroyed due to that Ilham as well as then eventually Himot as well. The villains, stealthy villains, stick to the vision and everything might have been like the case, definitely might have been like the very same case for like the Boatman part as well. You are like at one point in his life, like you might have had like a stable job or like a stable way of like living and everything, like which might have been probably with that absolute decision. And I would like all this like the life of like the Boatman part, which might have been stable at which might have definitely and might have been stable and stable career and stable life and everything for like the like salary and everything for like the Boatman part might have been totally going but lack might have been eventually at some point might have been lack instantly a shop and might have only got destroyed due to like something not going and unexpected like something happening and like which like career and everything that was getting destroyed and his like job and everything that's losing it and just like ending up with like and as well ending up in like a desperate kind of like situation, extremely desperate kind of like situation where like the foreman right now was saying that he was supposed to be eliminated a long time ago. Like that might have been talking about like really all the gambling level things might have like I thought the foreman might have been might have losing his job, might have ended up gambling and might have ended up losing it all. And I'm looking like the like him having huge depth and Amazon that might have been it's going up to eliminate him almost like he might have failure fight to like run away. And this might be what like Park might be even referring to as like he was supposed to get eliminated a long time ago, that which might have been due to that him and that way that while he was running away from those people who had shown up to collect money and everything like he might have also approached like non-self-vendor. So it might be in that deadline situation where like he might have only got a phone and that like I'm just like it might be to such point that I'm just like unexpected imitation to like experience might have happened or like a, due to the experience and everything like might have probably ran away and might have eventually ended up ending up in that living in like the street with like absolutely no money or like no food at all for like somewhere and exactly in like the past what Ilham had said about the people not being able to that the struggle about like the cold in like sunlight and that people not being it's not being possible for to like survive in street and everything like so such a situation of like lot of development. So it's like Park might have went through and like that's like Park might have been about to get eliminated in like that same form like it might have been at that very last second that like Park might have gotten like the invitation to like the student like the student might delivered by precisely the rapidly by might have been the case depending on the function. This might be the reason like once like eventually Park had realized that like you know like the person running like the student since it might have been like the Rakiji guy delivering that to that the government path that might have changed like the government path like the around like the government path will be reduced. This might be the reason for like in like Park's house like they are being just like the two quarters of like info as Park with like info as well as like Park with like the Rakiji guy might be due to the distribution you know definitely might so like even to like the person like just like Park right now telling like example how that it was like the captain that would be referring to like in that had gave him like a second chance like and like when Park as well to the person who is still remaining believing that absolute like that info was like failure where like in actually it might have been imposed like it might have been imposed in such that might have quite like Park like and eventually it might have it and cause Park to like end up in such a situation on the verge of like elimination and then that it was all like the guy playing savior and that was like basically what like part of the right now even to the family to live as like having spent what a second chance to like pop and all that might be the case definitely on thing. So the friends right now that is there's already been revealed that that info was like the winner of the 2015 million like and might have been from the 2016 million onwards that like info might have been given that the position of like from man by in might have been like the definitely the friends level you know the like from 2016 to 2019. Like it would be one among like the students in this range of years that like the boardman path might have participated as like a student candidate and might have eventually ended up becoming like the winner of might be the case certainly my consideration right now. So that's the for instance right now that is even the like the boardman path right now they eliminate like still like how exactly like example will be still making it to like CM and the thing it might be through definitely able to run right now for example to that focus like the pockets of like the Portman Park like the scenario that I'm looking for and I'm looking for like either in like the pocket of like the park like in one of the pocket of like park like there I'm looking like that not only finding some sort of like a clue connecting to like the possible direction that they would have to like go from like the present location they are in to make it to like this United. Like the scenario for one top that and like or like a different example right now that's probably something all across like the pockets of like path, but like still not being able to like, find any proof at all. But still I'm looking at that point like jump out of something like entirely of like the board. So it's like quite scenario that I'm looking at that way like I'm putting that jump still finding from within like the code like I'm putting that jump only finding some sort of like a hidden like location where there will be like the location coordinates of the district guide that hidden on like a paper or something that gets slipped and hidden away into like some corner of like the book, which like would be sticking out only to a certain extent or something like. And that way like I'm feeling like through a similar kind of like a way like I'm feeling either through like the pockets of like the government or like through something like that like the both like and the different like maybe one of these through these two also these through is like a different like example would be finding out that the as the direct like like head towards to find that this would be a that was the national scenario that I was trying. Most likely I'm dealing with about the for to be like allocation coordinate like exactly that like to be the groups that like general right now to be exactly the things without like creating it. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at. Well, it's really a spring without the regular at all like that the team of that jumbo and that single member who is like team who has managed to survive like basically tempo of like basically that way that sudah menjadi yang black make the next game and then typical about different like one like jump over because they remember about like this next team the the like one like jump only 40 months the team the members like by then like I'm like the situation will be all of them for the eliminated by capping those like the different other that is being on okay. So like the one trends right now the like the student experiments in surveillance candidates that will be provided with that in and like the last thing event that are right now also not like being placed on like the floor like I'm that way that never like even though scenario to be like in like of like the dinner like during my time like even though I'm the brain like there to not be a pretty good game taking place look like the taking light or anything that's still comfortable like once like the city argument to like basically have like the inability man of it have like the being candidates like attempt to even go to the extent of like breaking the so-called rules of experience that is the stadium workers have right now just before lecturing up at this level with that is that that they can that is the like attack up no like basically on the line that's like attacks are not allowed like outside of the planes and all that like I'm putting definitely still like I'm putting that according to that those like man like it's definitely that once like the lights will be turning off like and like even though there won't be an announcement of like or like ending of like connecting to like a physical game or like even though I'm putting that there won't be that like playing like I'm still that according to that in hope that within stick plan like I'm that things happening exactly accordingly. Where like I'm preparing like while having food that while seeing like the glass TV bank on the floor, right? And definitely that would be the creative so screen that like I'm like during night times once like the light will be turned off the next again the tournament and like the sleeping candidate straight away that once like the light will be turned off like in like that absolute darkness like the sleeping candidate like for me getting up from job that and trying to like eliminate like attack and eliminate like the scenario that I'm going to make them rather than like second with like targeting each and every single one of the with like that attack that will be taken that will be like the scenario that is that way like I'm doing that attack like which definitely will be far too obvious for like time zone that will be about to happen. So like I'm doing that during that point I'm doing that definitely before like the lights will be turning off like after like 10 times before then or the lights will be turning off like that will be Sanjon probably definitely then the one guy would be that staying close to that Sanjon and actually and I'm definitely by then like a different event like Minsu as well like the effects of like the thing that Minsu has eaten from that channel saying like like that's the effects as well by then would be coming on for me. So like I'm doing definitely at that point like Minsu as well and only will be fully like will be like this person right beside like Sanjon. Uh, and like Sangon and like Indian guys with that absolute intent to like definitely to protect actually like almost like the scenario that was like that way like I'm even one like the and like they be like moving like the bets and they be putting it in such a position according to like Sanjon's like plan to like that way so that they had like a mini for kind of better things with like bets like of like the Syrian candidates still would have already who has already been eliminated like which might be maybe still present in like the Syrian candidate home that Sanjon of the arranging all those like that around Sanjon and like the baby and like Kenjigan guy and like mentioned so as to like create like a for a mini for kind of like a thing with like a scenario that I'm using that arrangement of it to teach them professionally like the scenario that so and the time was by the time lecture like right before like like will be turning off like an hour and I was like still on like the light will be turning off like on the spring like getting the candidate like when before targeting like the revoke of like Sangyong and in Bitcoin guy and that even before targeting that process like and putting like the candidate one like the like return of that will like the create into like extreme point seeing like the money right in front of like in like the last event while having the food like putting in like them topic with the like the swinging candidates like straight away once like when I keep returning on like attacking and like trying to like eliminate like specifically candidates even outside of like the bottom before even attacking the bottom like this and after so like that's only happening and I'm looking for an extent like maybe like a strong few like maybe a strong three Indian candidates like this me eliminating that sort of Indian candidates and like that just like strong three Indian candidates like this me like attacking like the uh back forth of and everything and that will be attacking and like this point on that like end up with like mostly like them point like the bottom line separating like into like the hot trendy some of the committee that got that point like then you can die as well as like into doing the as well maximum to like perfect number for like skill like number friend like the first purpose to like board on will be like so and like then like can you can die should be like looking back towards this that baby like that given like the living guy that has its strength and coverage to like fight back with like everything and then that way like the secret handicap with like the Kenji like this that in extremely that adrenaline rush like happened to like the Kenji and that has the race like Kenji like taking out that all the remaining civilian candidates will be trying to like integrate that like all the incentives like the finance that I was with and that can be the thing till other than one like civilian candidate still remaining and like that civilian candidate like eliminating that that civilian candidate like eliminating like Kenji like scenario that I'm right. So that way like in the one guy eliminated when that road that's still like it's like the scenario that I'm doing. So but when like after like eliminating like then didn't die like I'm doing that once you get candidate like I'm doing in absolutely extremely winner kick man up will be walking towards like Sangyong. Going down the like Sangyong to play like takes the baby and like placing the baby behind the Sangyong like Sangyong like totally like trying to like protect the baby and I was like in that flash video like that similar speaking candidate and like Sangyong and that's the candidate I was like being extremely strong so like I'm like him totally like on that road rather like I'm like Sandor probably eventually taking a lot of injuries and getting more sort by like that shooting candidates like pushing out the and Sanjay that beginning sideline and would be badly injured and won't be able to like stop like that since we get it. So like after that since we get like will be like working uh towards like the baby like at that point exactly by that point it's like jumpers and like that surviving in the team and like I'm like by then being able to like make it to like game either through them finding some sort of either through like path to like pocket or like through something like the don't like can find some sort of like a specific like a coordinate kind of like a loop and like then by that time like making it to like game island and making it and then separating with the game meeting and making it to like schooling candidate home and making it towards like Sangyong and like the baby at that point and I was like that way and connect through that most likely example at that point like totally straight away that taking out like that inner stick since such a good candidate who will have walking to like the state at that point like Sana that that way like group jump up and that similar thing on like end up like like the baby being safe is like the Sana that I'm looking at the friend that's definitely the friend right now as government percent of like the game like on the current so this is like only a friend that I'm looking like the actual game like will be but the game that like like to be like an extremely far extremely dangerous time like the game and won't be just like a single elimination fight kind of like an elimination game between like the players won't be like the case I thought that's what like what like physical games will be like and so I just will be the reason for that the thing right now what I was not like this what I was trying to even to that civil narrative that definitely will be it was like trap to like trap and like trick them into like what is like continue this thing that has the feeling of like confidence false confidence into like them trying to like what to like continue playing the games and that way to fall into the trap of like the extremely even more dangerous games than even like the history game in 2024, but like even like the history game in like 2020, which is like kind of as in Korean there is a history game that it will be even more dangerous than even that last French game in that 2020 as well. supplement, it will be like change up to like an extreme level of that kind of experience that game would be supplement. So like I'm saying like the since like the button to say like at least to eliminate at least like a minimum of like three players like I'm saying that my friend right now for like I've got like out the game like the nature of like this is game would be like it might be such that basically it would be like to go in on the attack and to attempt the one side would be like attempting to like eliminate uh to be them that will be having like it's a bigger extreme of that in that attempt to that get themselves getting eliminated. Like there will be that extreme levels of like the nature of it to get number to single defense that basically the attempt to that try to like eliminate another player would be where like the source of like the game would be where like the player who would be attempting that to be having the high that extreme high risk of like getting eliminated from definitely mentoring. So like I'm something like being like a huge once again like a huge bit kind of like allocation where like there will be like maybe like narrow bridge that kind of thing. But like but think like that narrow bridge would be like slowly rotating or like moving uh, would be along the lines of like the nature of the game meeting. So like I'm saying there being multiple platforms that might be like rotating and like multiple pathways connecting to like the single pathway connecting to those multiple platforms and multiple like these multiple platforms which will be rotating like I'm not for like a game candidate like I'm thinking like the three like game candidates that will be eventually getting selected but like it's most likely the like Sanjay like Minko as well as like the base like the three individuals that will be getting selected like by the two candidates like just enough that I'm making and like some of them have for like temporary like anything like the situation like which is game will be such that like they will be be having to like stand on like an unmoving platform and like for like the top like spinded in the stuff would be for like the remaining eliminated to have like the top for like eliminating to attempting like to actually have to like eliminate like those three fully candidates before like time runs out like they would have to like only get into and move through this like moving more likely a rotating platform multiple platforms which should be like during the path of like rotation will be like only at a single point will be like ending up like this will pathway like ending up like coinciding with each other. But like it will be a continuous rotation to like anything like them having to like make that perfect jump through these like multiple platforms it could be called rotating for them to like eventually make it to like that final flat and moving platforms where at least three targeted players that they have to eliminate would be and this definitely might be the case, definitely might be clear. So how I'm going to like the nature of how exactly like the physical game might be like it definitely might be the like that I'm looking at things as an absolute good job for like for studio candidates who are right now targeting of like the circum steps the as well as mentioned it's like a different art that I'm looking for. So like that way like I'm that this whole in this like the game I'm like in the scenario to be like in the scenario to be like being like all the remaining players who will be like taking the role of attack like like all of them getting eliminated one by one like they will be most likely together like trying to cross like the evolving platforms like one by one and trying to like make it towards like the where like transport ministers and like maybe might be limit changes so during their journey trying to like make it there like one by one like the sitting candidate getting eliminated will be moving it will be getting eliminated like the as they were trying to cross like the scenario that like that they're going to be the position so looking for to be eventually scenario where like I'm looking at one the strongest among like the current Syrian gang. The strongest and like the most villain among like the current remaining Syrian terrorism like around him like since and like the different guy is what is like the work that I'm doing like making it to that finally they don't making it to like that final platform revolving around like a trading platform. You could be connected to that moving platform of that kind of like the basic development so will be just like any scenario that I so like I'm looking like at that point like once they are reaching that point platform like I'm looking like uh that villain stick singing and at that point targeting that empty gun guy and him trying to like eliminate like the empty gun guy in that final revolving platform and like trying to like push like the empty gun guy out of that platform to actually make the empty gun guy it's like scenario that way like a force fight happening between like the empty gun guy and that villain stick singing candidate and that fight eventually resulting in like both of them take a lot of injuries and to the point where like finally through such an bit extreme struggle like finding a figure like Pentagon guy managing to that push like the realistic shooting candidate out to take the platform and eliminating it like the scenario that and at that point I'm looking for a like by the time like Pentagon guy will be doing this like and like most likely I'm looking like 10 seconds like most likely remain at that point. Just like the scenarios that I'm putting, where like the Indigo and the 10 seconds would be like a possible scenario where like 10 seconds would be more than enough for like the instant guy to be able to like make that final jump and like the final revolving platform to like the unmoving platform where like Sanjay means it and actually really would be just like living a scenario that I'm but like I'm looking at that point like the Indigo guy, the badly injured Indigo guy like at that point would be totally not all like jumping towards like the platform where front of and instead like I'm looking like Pinterest revolving platform like Pentagon like late walking toward from that revolving platform that has like only 10 seconds would be remaining up to like the influence guy for me at that point that only jumping to like the platforms were like Sanjon mentioned and like the baby would be and like Pentagon guy at that point like mostly like as with intensity would be walking towards like the Sanjon when the baby would be and like scenario to be at that point like it will be meant for that would be protecting like the baby and Sanjon will be trying to like handle and tackle like the different guys and Sanjon will be having this like guard up and like facing like the different guys like scenario that are correct. At that point like the different guys that has with intensity to be walking towards like Sanjon and I'm looking for like the independent guy that at that point will be hearing like the sound of like reflecting. At that point I'm looking for like the independent guy so they suddenly giving up at that point and when we go and like something like telling like head bow down or something like that after feeling of that regret and guilt and shame which like was at that point to be feeling like like when we go at that point maybe like like bowing down and basically folding Sanjon's like legs and basically leading to like Sanjon while telling that after sorry like something that the thing like clearing and begging to like Sanjon at that point, breaking down and like trying again, begging Sanjon to like to take care of like the baby. Like in the scenario that I'm for it. And like I'm looking like then we going guy doing this and I'm looking like by then like I'm looking like the confidence can be over and I'm looking at that point feels like the game of like eliminating like the end guy and I'm looking like and even before that, like I'm doing like showing off that kind of that episode series space, like I'm not most likely not taking a promise to like anyone guys because of everything like the realistic thing that thing going guys so far and even like only not when attempting to like save Janti even while Sanjot was like had like was probably willing to like save Janti like I'm the friend like so like they are going to bring like Sanjot not most likely not making promise to like 21 guys even while like 21 guys would be taking Sanjot to like take off like maybe but like I'm Sanjot with that at least in this case like most likely looking at like 21 guys in eyes and telling him that basically that until like Sanjot like Sanjot will be there for like the baby it's like uh, along the lines of that episode, she just gave like kind of telling like the guy, and at that point, like independent guy getting the smiling that up through smile of like relief, and at that point, the plan of like the time being over and the stadium of person eliminating like the independent guy, like the scenario that I'm. So I feel like I'm spending right now for like most likely doing the final scenario towards the end of like, the game being like Sanjon, like the baby and Mitchell being like the winner of like the game in like the relationship. It's like the scenario that I'm looking for again. That I'm still thinking about the potential that like when Sanjon in like the past having lost his own daughter like basically most likely having to do with like the Indians and like in them trying to like totally prove like in them or like to go through like the destruction of like the Sanjon like life by destroying like the proper job that Sanjon had and into that way Sanjon ending up into like doing his job and really starting his like getting where like even though like even though like Sangon Sangon's character had played a part as well. Like Sangon starting to like getting as well. Eventually, which is there was a friend like kind of floating like on uh his own order like and still different like page and time to eventually something in like very same Sangon like with him even though like Sangon like only like strayed away from like the path of good and right while Sangon had like eliminated like they still like overall like really due to like someone having more than experience, due to like someone having like multiple times to like fail like absolute strain like I'm putting like this whole part of like someone's strain from like strain from like the path of the bond to like more to like the path of the right number working like that way to the setting in like two the games itself actually ending up basically having another lot of respect through that chances that child because most likely I think that is like a like Sangon definitely even by Sangon won't be like replace his own daughter with like chances that not still I'm looking that Sangon that definitely would be that we were only planning on like what is that definitely so that was like America where like the sort of my right now could be and think that but it was like they get a sitting there and they need to like a house that close to where the like probably live and to like live at least like there maybe like Sandra okay but like Chanti's part of that like close to what Sandra maybe along this line like Sandra will be planning but like basically I'm looking at least Sandra getting that feeling like having a dog so like Chanti for like Sandra usually one thing will be over and once like Sandra will be bring down it like the studio in that Sandra like that Sandra once again will be finally having that like absolute feeling of like having a lot again through that Chanti store by Sandy only dealing with like Chanti store like the scenario that I'm looking for and I'm looking like actually that fate and time eventually would be that way that bringing about like Chanti store to like Sandy having a lot like I'm looking that would be totally would be eventually spiraling into like the Sanjon finally so they feeling close to like only giving up on like Sanjon like so say after like the experience and basically Sanjon at that point maybe that definitely due to that Sanjon definitely the like like this like to start like definitely Sanjon deciding to like stop even after them down in hope and like the games and like the Sanjon country like I'm Sanjon maybe taking the decision that to be there for like until that that was thrown up and only at that point for like Sanjon until then for like Sanjon to live and lead into Black Dot and to be there for her and that only once like dot that was thrown up and basically it's like once she starts her own journey in life like and that only at that point for like Sanjon to definitely continue on with like to like basically bring down like studios in like other for the other that's like taking place in on the other countries as well. Like, that's a final come to this kind of like a decision like I'm not like Sanjon I'm down to towards like the end of like season three of like the Indians in like the final episode towards the end of the final episode like doing the finale very much because of the sense right now this for like not only Sanjon but like Ninja as well I'm looking right now wanting to like be like the game like the scenario that but like I'm thinking that the big because of that Ninja by now like the effects of like capturing that into a Pentanos game would be over by now. So like the Ninja was right now that they will be voting to like Ninja games that scenario. But like I'm like in the case of like the Indian guy like in the Indian guy even the like the lady like I'm looking like the Indian guy like that has the greed for like money looking for like tempting that and putting like the Indian guy to like the point of that even while like the Indian guy has like the most like currently the biggest task of like being there for like really and protecting actually still I'm looking like that with greed of like towards like money and that temptation towards like money of Bitcoin right now putting in like the Indian guy right now totally while he was stepping up to that board like I'm looking like the Indian guy like actually about to like I'm looking like the Indian guy straight away like about to like the global touch to like continue playing the game. But like I'm looking like right as like the Indian guy to hear about the that but like the Indian guy hearing like the sound of his own baby. And I'm looking like that point like the Indian guy will be hearing the stuff but still I'm just point like the Indian guy is still point for the condition and that's money and like so we process like the what I'm doing that continue playing the game with like living the scenario that I'm doing and like definitely I'm going to bring like it will be this like but still I'm going like this would be totally like something in like that absolute extreme skill forming anything like when you get right. Actually I'm going like the moment I can be going guys pressing like the buttons like continue playing game like since that point I'm like even more of that scare like I'm definitely happening and intense scare happening from like sound towards like the Indian guy that have to stare of like absolute judgment of like that absolute performance like when because guy will have done at that point like in the scenario that I'm but like even more of like a great scare which may like creating all sorts of that feeling which happened to like they when Sanjay has shared the state like then more of like anything share on the like from that point on like Sanjay share has like been in the like scenario. And this should be what eventually resulting in like that guilt that collective piled up guilt which was already wasn't to like extreme within like then when like all of that like comes to the surface once like the individual guy seeing like continuous extension would be definitely be the ones who like make it towards like go make it towards like in that experience finally towards like the Sanjon Vincent and like the baby movie and at that point like the when like breaking down like totally fine in front of like Sanjon and while holding Sanjon like and begging for like forgiveness and begging to like Sanjon to like take care of the baby and like then we going that waiting later and all that like it would be happening at that point it's definitely to be like that build up between like then going back at that point like totally got it finally and like some to suffer the that and would be totally like changing like then going guy that point towards like final moment when I'm like in one guy maybe finally and like repenting for like for the winner stakes at that the yes done so far like to the not that episode but I'm still remember the question that like right now but like the way they have built during like the feast of lecture remaining civilian candidate like the baby as well being given that when he got that kind of thing that lead that in a similar manner like I'm doing right now with like the remaining civilian candidates voting like that the baby as well think would be made to like vote through like like the one of the begin of like holding two photos of like the X and O bottom like but and to continue and use the games and like the baby continues that without having any awareness of idea or like the baby like those two photos being held and like right in front of like the baby and like the baby is touching without realizing anything like the baby touching that the blue photo to continue playing the baby like that way that the baby's work as like getting registered as like uh, baby wanting to like continue playing the game like during the scenario that I'm looking at for it. But we have potential right now as for like that green liquid that is Sabian and basically like in like the recipients had seen through like that ceiling air ventilation like however like the stadium had seen like the steadily seen that was was preparing this green liquid like understanding that green liquid and system of within exactly like some sort of like a highly dangerous like asset might be the case, especially when the frame can like I'm in that specific game right now. Is once it will be revealed like I'm at that point like the importance like the significance of that green liquid all the way back from that position will be getting revealed like in the scenario that I'm saying. So like I'm putting that green highly dangerous like liquid. This might be the case that I'm looking like that back in like 2020 might have been sorry for it for back in like the 2020 that's Squid Game that might have been meant and intended for like the fifth Squid Game in like all the way back in like 2020 might have been like the case that being a but like I'm saying that might have been some that at certain point in like the 2020 years like there might have been a decision changed by either most likely till now which that Illa might have told you to that the permanent person will be that way that decision change might have happened and that might be the sole reason for like the final to game in like 2020 game that fight between that strong move and like John might have been the case of the things. So like I'm still to the thousand like scenario being that you know not having forgotten about that green acidic liquid. So like I'm gonna nail that that when that way like in post for me like the person deciding to like bring back that I think of like green acidic liquid into like the games like the scenario that I'm so like I'm putting a just about them and I'm probably putting that for like the game will be since I'm going like it will be sung on like the baby as like the and like will just being like will be ending up being like the three individuals that are getting selected by like the remaining candidates like to make it towards them like an example like that to be like revolving platforms and like I'm going to bring that we should be that having a simple path like the Indian candidates would have to like jump and basically make eventually multiple revolving platforms to use the like to making it towards like the like Sandra since and like create this revolving platforms at that point that could be like this like huge open like situation of like these green things of like liquid might be the case name of the brain. So like that way like end up with like even like the real revolving platform to be like revolving at like a high enough speed that like basically it brings that much of like an extreme critical task for like them to like fight. not losing the balance to be able to like cross like the multiple evolving platforms one after another that without them falling to like the green liquid finish like the revolving platform. Might be like the case of like finish when that I'm also talking about like how like the game might be like supplement rate. So like the supplement right now, or like those right now telling me or to that bring back like the past today candidate and it's me or the that as it was into that let me also of the book like that would be totally enough to track by that the officer would have find out the fix in the mind to let me eliminate your and the lead to the like the officer right now which is that much after like finding out about like you know having kind of proof like the power you get it in like yeah that one like the officer might have been was being discussed out about like the situation and might have been something like Indian race attacking your and might also at that point you might have system in mind to like eliminate your the new trend because that's the danger is that of like the extreme danger of like the situation is like the of himself to he himself right now with the possibility that leading to like the role of that thing how that will lead to that were like that absolute priority for like the student candidate that that like they could then manage that escape that way definitely that way that the officer will be answerable at that point that control even finds out about like such an attempt by any of having even happened and basically even that the fact that like being candidate was like had escaped to like the point of even managing to like escape out of like civilian building that even it's that much itself uh, like if info finds out about it like then like the consequence for like the officer would be the officer straight away getting eliminated on it like elimination by might be like the base supplement like it will be seen as that much of like the failure of like the current straight away like will be taskful with like ensuring such situations don't happen by it might be the case. So like ensuring that might be like the consequence will be like seeing like a failure of like the officer and like the consequence will be like so an elimination the elimination of like the officer might might be the case so like the officer himself might be right now extremely stressed out kind of like a situation but we never pretend so like the never preemption right now like the officer right now threatening you also like turn the ball and like revealing that who knows of like the so much of like one of the you are like telling the it's like unbetter like and you're right now turning the ball like I'm different but in the field right now as for like why you want to be turning the ball it would be definitely to that not take like the last thing candidate that to like the game island but that's definitely your that plan right now would be definitely to that definitely eliminate like the officer right now definitely remember it so like to do that like you right now by turning the ball like one thing on will be doing would be that you there will be an island that will be easily close to that the Squid Game island. It's definitely memorable. So like you will be right now turning that the ball like the moment like the of the release that you know is like the hospital was like the which is the that sort of a graph to the candidate is in like and like you always like returning the ball and like heading towards that kind of that will be close to like the game island and like I'm doing that to have that to drop like the Australian candidate on that other island to and different like at that point to telling like the past Indian candidate to like stay student in that island until that returns back for him will be along the lines like to be that like assuring him and like different straight away setting off like the move to like game at that point like open our that I'm and definitely with like even like the person like basically as like like setting off trying like a schedule like the past Indian candidate with like the team of the dogs up behind them and basically the fact that like kind of was like mistake in like that area like and different that so to the consumer information about the parting for me or like take this two job like drop off like about being at like on this like other island like I'm sure in that something in like the possibility not being able to like in that kind of like a situation like the possibility not being able to like find me on in that part not being able to like find me on like the scenario where I'm in. So like that like the possibility of the officer instead of finding me or like then only running into like the boat where like uh Jumbo and who's like investing more with the like the scenario that I'm so like I'm like right now it's like look like Jumbo and it's like the team member like turning that I think like they have heard something like that will be like the sound like the incoming pursuit team of like that might be the case the event three so like that way I can predict the pursuit team like totally showing up to see that quote and then looking like at that point like I'm going to like Jumbo scale like this is like Jumbo having like only one of the collecting member of the team and like even since like injured badly injured like in the team so like them Jumbo and him like always are like take it up in that one so like I'm putting in the first team being expecting that sport and bring that sport and like I'm going at that point that I've put just like I'm doing like Jumbo and like in your team member like while staying in like taking out like the first team and while leading one of like the first team like the scenario that I'm looking at like they will capturing that single first team member and I'm like Jumbo probably threatening to that eliminate him if he doesn't take the two like the spear line. Just like the scenario that I'm looking at. So like that way like and that point is like Jumbo also like putting out Jumbo's form and everything like actually taking a photo of something to game after and like he will be sending that message that he wanted to like send so badly to like the police chief like at that point like the scenario that I'm looking at. That way like the police chief getting like the message and like the situation of the police chief at like police chief at that point itself will be would have entered like the station and would be in the shock of like seeing like game work up like uniform that like Janto in like that about like in like the about like easily had like right just really like I mean like about like so like the way in like to be like before that time would be in the station to be in that shock like situation on scene like the free game in the place to like to get to that exact time that the police people were seeing like Janto in that as well and like certainly Janto would be threatening that since game work to eliminate him, and that way we'll be getting out like the location coordinates for like, the skill game island, and like that way John will be sending like the message to like for like the location coordinates of the to game island, and that way like I'm like John along with like that Indian team member and like the skill game of like that way so that skill game of like running the boat like them making it finally making it to like the game island because like the scenario that is open. So like I'm entering as they will be entering into like the CM island like just like Janko totally like like happen behind like that studio marker like and Janko threatening into like to take the to like the studio meeting like the scenario that is so like why this would be happening like in like New York would be like making it after like dropping off like the bus being landed right on that nearby island like New York will be making it back to like game island at that point to eliminate that absolute for to like eliminate like the of the minimum frame. So definitely I'm going to find like that way like by you know repeatedly working into like the game island like at that point like you know from a distance like spotting like jump of the team of like jump out and one of the team member and like remember like actually with like jump out using like the weapon and threatening and like trying to like get skill game of to like take the to like the screen within like looking at the so like to this point like I'm doing like anyone alone like seeing the from a distance like looking at that way like anyone totally seeing that as like then the opportunity for like new to like totally to make that steady federation back to like the begin building and make it towards like outside and to make it networks of my goal of the line like not everything and that way. To look like new totally sitting as like it is already totally like take advantage of the distraction that will be created uh, by like the integration of like Janho's team. To get up the line like more everything and that means like it's an after that point. So like she was like a right but like she was like a right now already captain of having that phone info and like I'm not revealed to like info about like Park like the Bodman Park possibly having been eliminated. So like the info right now will be totally maybe but that app system without like the is finding out like info but that app system you know still get the and rate like due to the current situation like still info so that app system might not only arrange like an army like CM of the to like for like an incoming preparation from like example in Steam like the scenario that I'm different. And I'm still can have my job also given like the to like to be able to capture Jumbo alone like to not eliminate Jumbo like the scenario like about that that when those for like anybody that in like Jumbo Steam that preparation and like then for me uh just in preparation attempt like talking that pairing without creating it and like Jumbo and then from that work team member of the Jumbo straight away getting eliminated and the next that game was from Jumbo will be searching as well to take on to that game meeting as well on preparation about in that civilian of the work will getting eliminated and yeah like Jumbo on the like according to like it was called like the game of the eliminating Jumbo but like capturing Jumbo but that assistant is like the scenario that I'm missing over. So during this time when orders will be happening like I'm doing like New York City be making such infiltration and would be making it towards like the room of like the officer. So like if the scenario to be like it being the officer that be having to like step out of a storm to like actually to like according to like it was orders to like stop like the infiltration and all that. So like and like after like jump out we could into like a captivity kind of like a situation within like while like the officer would be probably returning back to his lateral and, at that point, that was when I was maybe like the officer probably thinking of that we left it quite like the prosecuting has no contact like the officer and basically while like the officer was recording like the prosecuting like no one picking up like the cop it's like the scenario and at that point when I'm like from behind like stuff like this that the officer was suddenly hearing that the voice of like and like by the time like and like the what's the stuff in turning back and like something seems more quite up because so like I'm talking like more the totally so that's what that's to like have more purpose like and like totally like your to like totally purpose like that feels like totally nothing like more that like new can totally escape that feels like totally fine with it and like he makes no harm and then and that but like I'm looking at that point like your that I've already fixed in our mind like in your factory itself like that mother was like totally in pain of like being able to like find the about it like and that least that threat that basically that officer had made connection to I think to that officer knowing that the location of the hospital of like the influence of like under like under like that might have actually feel that the paper like the officer by news and might have been the case principle like that way so that was upon that leading like the officer even though like the past like that might have been some of the might have helped news out while New might have been like the words of like elimination that was like out of had these kind of like has been that of like doctor like the past having found New York for the time in that some sort of saying that next really bad situation like still have when that New York in that, at that point like I think totally eliminated the of that like the scenario also at that point I was like when they would be mentioning and all these things that that was like the office of that had say and all that like the function of that but like in like a cold man of still filmmaking that was like it's another side of me and that's why it's another point that after like filmmaking doctor like New York it only as like New York would be reflected back to towards like that uh towards like the past to be again in like 20 of my and then it makes it like and then like as New York will be thinking of that like and they will also turn back from that home of the doctor. At that point, I was like, like the visuals of the CCTV camera, in like the catching Neo's like attention. Just like the scenario that I'm thinking about, like what Neo would be totally not thinking that CCTV visuals would be like the class piggy bank like so that point like still being placed onto like the block in that surgical like scenario that I'm so like that totally catching Neo's attention and basically at that point like Neo would be feeling up like the that but that in like the current situation, like it might be possible for making use of that access self to actually to before like the Indian ends like because like anyone at that point would be totally checking like the sensitivity of like what Indian candidate so like like at that point producing as to be no one that so like I'm really straight away assuming that this form of exactly the Indian right now will be going on so like only thing that we we're also seeing like happen the Indian of in that in that about for like the last three dance still like more bit only thing that we get me also like so I don't need that actually that make it through that room in like the current situation might be possible would be around the line like you know with everything so like it's new quickly and steadily make it there and basically like quickly like the spoil like the last three bank and then like you know to be able to do stuff and that but the next end of like that money to like for the country to be able to like make it back let's get and with me on that way quickly make price straight away I can see like make that just get that money then you know might be able to like and you know might be able to actually make it to exactly what it means to like make it back to like the board when you might be able to actually like go to that nearby and then quickly get the funds to the candidate onto like the board back and onto like the board and take it back to like the mainland where like that way like by giving that all that money to like the Palestinian candidate like he will be actually will be able to like ensure like the survival and uh, treatment and everything of like the form of the thought candidate will get of the lines that was at that point will be tempted by seeing like the last piggy bank in that room like totally like like three place team doesn't don't walk and all that like the scenario that I'm So like that way, Neo probably that for that temptation and basically that totally take that up to this kind of that the simple scenario to be that by the time that Neo will be making it to that room or like the where like the club figure back will be like an important fight. So like an important fight that Sigin will go over and that Sanjon, according to my materials in that it will be the number important possibly like Sanjon as well as Vassili as well as Minsu will be like the three that winners of like the games electorally report. So like they will be brought back to that room where like in the club figure and will be played on for like it will be during this time that like Nyon would be totally making it to that road that point and the point that with that access step and then the technical stage that and technical that still managing that take out that the when the gym was soon in that room surrounding that the last TV that like the scenario that I was doing. So like after doing that after that like I'm like and like when doing this like I'm doing like Sanjon as well as like uh Minsu would be in that short kind of like situation and like the daily on the screen. So like neon we saw seeing like it's still like the scenario that I'm putting at that at that point I'm like like neon still totally like like threatening at like Sanjon and like Minsu because like I'm putting like even though neon has like put out a pretty screen like the 2022 games and might have seen how like Sanjon back in like the 2022 games that had actually take a decision to like give up all that money in that specific game to like save some basically that would be something that like anyone would be remembering at that moment like was scenario that I'm looking yeah like I'm just solely due to the supplement so in New York I have absolutely no idea at all about like I'm and like technique New York I'm going to bring that to the pointing up but attacking into this left scenario that I'm looking about and at that point, when number two friend like from behind, like Neo getting eliminated, like the scenario that and like at that point, it's supposed to be like the whole team of like Joy and like the police and like the remaining police force like making the infiltration into that thing. And basically, at that point, it's like them eliminating like the Neo on seeing like Neo that basically pointing up weapon at like and that was another that so like that way like I'm like Neo totally falling. And then the like near will be on like the verge of like elimination at that point. Like another direction. So like looking at that point, like New York, yeah, every last point, like I'm doing like trying to telling Sanjay as for like basically for like to help this little girl who's left off unwell and like that father was basically in this like island that like totally next to like was the game island and basically for like Sanjay at this point only Sanjon alone can like save her. Basically would be along the lines like I'm thinking like Neol at that point probably begging to like Sanjon at that point by Neol and I'm chanting like the last words of like Neol to like Sanjon and not saying that has this fear and all that like the scenario that I'm describing. So that way like Neol getting eliminated like the scenario in front of Sanjon like the scenario that so like that being like so, and I'm while also we have like Neol will be taking off her mask to like Sanjon and all that's like another thing. So like I'm going like in the New York Sanjon like meeting like totally happening only at that point like the scenario that like so that means that way like I'm going like Sanjon totally even though on the scenario to be like Sanjon before being able like even assure of New York that like to take care of it like in New York probably doing like the injuries and like getting eliminated still I'm going to Sanjon without wanting to like mind like technique save that like there was like the Indian scenario that I'm saying. So like that way number and like while like the policy like storming in doing that to the embedded number and like at that point I'm looking like likely most likely that the upper like the huge team of that police was like the policy like storming in bullets to the embedded at that point. And that way like the thing the over like not even in hope being able like get and home getting captured, the wave is getting captured and like for example totally getting free from this lack of within like game building bar like example kind of like a situation is it's like a scenario that I'm looking and basically like while Sanjo may be like spotted by like the police and will be about to take to be taken away from like the game island. At that point of time, like Sanjo only like pretty much telling like the police also that he has to like only go up to that island that's like close and basically and I'm looking like especially there might be a name to that island which like Neon might be telling to that Sangyon before that and Neon will be that before Neon select last that was another so like that way that Sangyon's that way that will be refusing to like leave without like him being taken to that island for enough to that position that the police that Django as well so they will be at that point assuring Sangyon that they will take care of it and they that way like Django at that point like heading off to that island while Sangyon and like Ninja and like the baby could be taken back, could be taken back to like the mainland, and that would be like at that point that Jungkook would be going up to that island nearby and basically getting that from the Sydney candidate and saving it and basically that them ultimately getting back to like the mainland and like and then like for like that money for that money like the last piggy bank like even though Sangyeon and Minsu and like the baby would have want like the experience of like 2024 games that I'm doing still like the scenario that I'm doing is for at that point for like the very sports that confiscating all that money in that last figure that my consideration for like before like the so quickly taking John away like I'm also operating it for like the unmasking of like info happening and I'm looking like San John probably getting that up with shock of that one like the unmasking of it someone will be having like San John will getting that up with shock that seeing that it was info this and downtime and basically Sanjon at that point would be extremely enraged and to protect Sanjon like putting it into like absolute strength to like trying to like point towards like invoke to like attack it. It's like person up that I was remember like the police force like basically holding on tightly to like Sanjon and stop and that way like Sanjon will be taken out of the game and it's like the end back to the mainland of like scenario that I again like jump out for the like and that totally the friend will be getting faster and will be taken away. It's actually the scenario that I'm looking for. Like that way, I'm like well, like for the surviving yet for like the time we yet like would be having to like face the trials and everything like the scenario that I'm looking. But like Django at that point, that in front of like the police force, like they be staring at like info, the unmanned command like info and they believe that the product they won't be exchanging any words at all to each other, but like it will be just that stare of like ability for that for that even at that point and for like in my surviving like the even after all the villain things that involved and like it's like within the scenario that I'm going to talk about and my very impression. So I'm looking for like business so check up the different like at that point for like the money like the last CD bank that will be living from the state by the 24 to the different like standard only would be taking care of like links with like that like scenario that I'm offering and like someone with that kind of money like and then good surgery happening and basically like credit with that uncle that way getting saved and like the father and like that way living that way like the father candidate and like someone also clearing like the rest of it about thinking candidate of them so like scenario that I'm looking at the point and okay and in my particular impression right now is so like the more likely the reason for like when you can like voting to that continue playing the game and we continue to that like basically maybe being to that only protect like they might see the game simply because of that that voting having even taken place after like the end of like the game was like given to the Squid candidate. So like at that point I'm super maybe like the Indian guy might have thought ahead and might have seen like the possibility of that definitely the voting will be like totally outmatched and in like the favor of like continuing playing like the game. So like at that point to like okay correct goes and especially it's like through the hint like basically into like the game that it was about like elimination in the replay of like the example I mean that the one guy might have probably at least might have been obvious for like the Indian guys that like that maybe that that in order to that protect that baby definitely the Indian guy would probably have to that might have been strategy that like the Indian guy might have used by voting to that continue play like the continue to like the game and basically that way to like correct that the majority of like the remaining Indian candidates into thinking that like the Indian guy is on their side and basically that way so that like basically in like the game like basically then the Gwen guy might have even fixed in his mind because like already the Gwen guy might have been even though he might have sold on the other side like he might have been like he might be right now drowning in that extreme game like basically of like abandoning Janti so like I'm just like the Gwen guy might have fixed in his mind after like the fixed game after he had survived like the game that the kid might have got to the point where like the Gwen guy might have fixed in his mind that basically to like totally protect like the daily outcomes might be like it is definitely myself really so to ensure that like the maybe make it out of like the game and is like by the framework then maybe I'm looking for like for like possibility of like maybe 15 due to the reason that like when you like might have even abandoned generally in like game so that like then we going like could be the for like the baby it's also like about the that because that come then you going like point of view like that then you going like in that point while time for so abandonedly while then you going like the game had basically had to like carrying like the load of like jumping by simultaneously like like having like a fully jump that the jump of killing jump of like then different guy might have only seen that like the positive that maybe not being possible and that way that then different guy as well as jumping if jumping if check then different guy and then that like hit as well as jumping both will be getting eliminated so that like they like the one wants to be and like the other are being over to like the field would be along the lines like Bridget Indigo and I might have made it for to that great extent ahead might be the case like definitely not so like maybe that yeah like when Indigo and I might have kept that secret from like the Indian candidate at like quite like the Indigo and I had abandoned Janti in like the game might be also the case that remember like it might be part of like the sport this thing the game of like the remaining speaking candidates that like who only elected like they that like Indian guy might have only right now voted to continue to like to be might be the case definitely not different. So like the vote but it might have been obvious for like the Indian guy that like it will be definitely to that continue play like the game regardless of that whichever vote like Indian guy might be the case definitely not the same. It's the real question that like that way that it might have been like Indian guy like creating a strategy might be the reason for like Indian guy that voting like continue to like playing like six game might be the case for and like think that this game like then you can like while freaking all of like the remaining student candidates into like saying that like then you can guys on their side like so that then you can guys to like this game to like only destroy all of their plans and basically to throw that selfish betrayal like for like then you can guys and that eventually the betrayal for like you can guys to like to ensure to like eliminate all those like majority student candidates and that way to like ensure that basically the daily like productivity would be to like to ensure those like implement that and that thing would be that then you don't like while it might be the case is that we might implement information like maybe it might have been due to that then which one guy that eventually like better like the system and then like basically that can like then one guy deciding to like so they make up for it by ensuring that was like the message out of like student pilot that might be the to ensure this like I'm to be like so you can buy might have you might have want to pay but then you might have been going to that experience pain and suffering like you might have prioritize like the production of that daily even for that generally getting like eliminated by assuming by totally thinking that like the point guy doesn't is like the only thing the Indian guy cares about is like money even more than like currently or even the game that have like generally even think in such a way and they believe to even to like countries like last trust like I'm even though that might have been extremely painful for like the Indian guy like still for like the Indian guy like the priority might be to like to probably correct like remaining student candidates into saying that like Japanese like some this lack of the same mindset as like the majority of the student candidates to wait for to continue playing like the games and for that like to like not have like the majority of the student candidates not find out about like Japanese that about like going guys like even just probably to like make that children different on that to protect like they might be the accurate basis that you know brain that you know brain right now that you know right now and bring back to like game and sending back the bar you can directly from the island and the foreign that need things like more the things that like more and not know as for like the GPS system being people often the things like suppose like understand still New York certainly like the moment New York entered back into like a game and like New York like highest priority would be ensuring that they is the first thing to not be able to like go up of like the path to the candidate. So like anything like for that like from the play you know will be first heading over to like the top on like this game item where like the both of like the pursuit team would be and different like uh would be passed in, and I'm looking like they are like I'm looking like new of the going there or like good scenario that I'm saying. At that point, I'm looking like the with like jobs are already having found out in the details that for like bots, bots still having left things to be minded, like I'm looking at me. So that right now, the current scenario to get because in order that have to steps will be making it towards like the location of text of in next game today. And there like the commercial will be seeing that the first few thing that will be getting on to their work. So like at that point, self open that and also that after step have like the first few thing would be like setting off from that the game and at that point self open like any or that was that point itself with that absolute position like they like use it for weapon and the point like the pursuit scope like but now that I'm looking for is that way that and that as well as like taking out like the game of the game that make like the scenario that I'm looking and like then I'm looking for like not only that continuing on making on way to consider back into like studio building to ensure up to that eliminate that absolute intent to like eliminate like the scenario that I'm looking at. So like the freedom crimson right now was like civilian or right now which is on United States on he wants to see something like perfectly. So the video of this for like point on that like that's civilian was already talking about that the front man like still like this as well and the point with such an absolute trap and that the villains in hope might put for like Sanjon to like off the more creative process for Sanjon. It's definitely my opinion. Because like I'm right now with that the studio was saying this to like Sanjon and in that Sanjon was likely telling that like no, he's not interested in that scene like the format to get on the line like my sort of saying like but like maybe either that or like the other possibility that I'm for like Sanjon taking the baby along with him to see that the format that the scenario. So like at that point I'm looking at the game of telling Sanjon to like leave the basic there and like if the Sanjon wants to like see like the format to be along the line something like the William at that point telling Sanjon. And this as well would be another fact that like I'm looking like in hope would be like willing to be uh shooting against like Sanjon. Because like every time like Sanjon will be like doing something good like as for like an extreme kind of like with like Sanjon like ideology like whenever like Sanjon would be like going to the extreme to like save someone or like in an extreme good manner like whenever Sanjon will be doing something like each and every single time like that will only extremely going against like all the ideologies that involve believing in and that literally the causing like it helps to like feel forever within and basically that way like after like that discovery might be forming very formative because each time Sanjon will be doing something like that. So like a different like in the case of like the whole in the case of like the Squid game, like the fact that like Sanjon was like totally willing to like totally even after crossing like the fact that Sanjon is like totally willing to like absolutely go back to crossing like solely to like save Janti even while like Janti's like boyfriend like basically even while like 21 guy had refused to like save Janti and I was still remember the mention that like basically then we go and take first decision might have been like naturally might be that due to like the secret strategy of like 21 guy to like totally prioritize like the safety of the baby that actually self even more than Janti might have been the case, but like from a third party perspective, from like info perspective, but like after what might have happened would be like that like not even Janti being able to like understand like when we going to guide that computing that so like info might have the frontman info might have not been able to like understand like as to like why exactly Sanjon was like willing to like like for a stranger to like Janti and I don't think going back through that was probably will like go back through like the solely to like save junkies while time as well as like the swimming of like the jump rope was like so fast like and time also like that act of like Sandron being willing to do that and solely Sandron not doing that solely due to like junkie stop Sandron. Like I'm looking that as well might have disturbed info. So like I'm looking right now info once again just try to like going to destroy that as well goodness within like Sanjo by like totally putting like the next test for like Sanjo. So like I'm thinking like in like the fourth begin like with Sanjo eliminating Taylor might have been another test that put by like governance info to like totally change Sanjo to like totally have Sanjo destroy his own identity to which like the governance info might definitely beginning with like Sanjo. that to be ending up eliminating the might have been what might have happened certainly well written. But right now this would be that next step for that by that realistic import for like Sanjon through that have Sanjon once again destroyed. Everything even to the person that like Sanjon believes in and that goodness within like Sanjon to like Sanjon so think that it to get to destroy that by having like Sanjon like if you know how badly Sanjon wants to like to capture like the format to eliminate the format to get to that format info knows that far too well by now because Sandor hasn't spent 3 4 years to be able to like do that like I'm whispering that we so in hope we can get that in San John if that San John will be like right now so that San John having given that promise to that I think that to that junkie to that take to be there and take care of the junkies like baby that really saying San John will be that the they decide to chat achieve Sandra that ultimate dream of like being able to like make it towards like the format. Would along the lines like people might be wanting to like once again like force Sandra to like once again deploy the enough within Sandra might be what I can do right now I can be so like in uh would it only singing along the lines of like they exactly like how Sandbox had destroyed because I really like the uh in like the force to game by eliminating they whole like amazing Sandbox right now would be the temptation would be or something in like Sandbox for me abandoning that baby that was followed by itself like in like with the game candidate room and basically heading off to like meet like from match to get over the line like in a bit of the but like I'm saying that hope of getting hold of getting destroyed and that are working it's like Sanjon right now telling that giving that absolute scare back towards like that game worker who right now offers Sanjon to that take Sanjon to like the command at Sanjon staring back at him and raising the Sanjon telling him with that absolute stern and strong voice that like really no matter what happens that Sanjon is definitely not going to at all leave the side of the stage would be along the lines of the like Sanjon go taken back to like that's the game worker right now and that rejecting like that's the game workers like how come he that made left the format himself that scenario that I'm doing and definitely in both of the curiously will be watching and seeing this and will be extremely shocked and to the point that I will be even fixated on seeing like that boldness of like Sanjon at that point and of like probably still holding on to that remaining goodness to the next one is like the scenario that I'm looking only bring I'm okay. But that means right now for like Sanjon right now on top of that already having fallen for like involved like trap that ending up eliminating that table and the Sanjon the point was I will the Sanjon right now also abandoning the baby to like make it the fun man like I'm definitely right now according to Black, in those lack of events on Saigon for like most like a problematic campaign would be that the main reason would be roughly that Saigon like elimination of like the Latin guy might be the reason might be like the actual younger brother of like blood younger brother like of that info might be the case definitely might be correct. So definitely I'm looking like all the like Saigon and to make forcing Saigon to like destroy tricking and manipulating Saigon and forcing Sangyon to that quite strong ideology and also of that like this certain situation as well would be like the next extent of like suffering that like revenge kind of like a suffering that in the many probably planning for like Sangyon by having Sangyon abandon like the day to need like some man might be the case that means then that like sitting on the so like I'm putting like Sangyon might have right now fallen for that trap and so that definitely puts like Sangyon right now automatically to be to that need that the situation will be sound on right now falling over the trap that in what again might be the case that you know the open. But like I'm putting that since that solely due to that new like infiltration to that fact to like the game within through the air ventilation I'm putting that solely due to that reason alien like I'm putting that through the air ventilation network like I'm putting that new ambassador that would be solely by sheer coincidence them like one right now as student through like the air ventilation network and like proceeding that like scenario that is and that point like you seeing that shocking sight because like I'm on that the scenario to be like the sex and not being there for actually right now on the different decks for like the player of the different deck there will be only a single game work of items stacking it up in that thing during that point. And I'm going to jump specifically for like as part of that. It was like realistic plan. Like I'm just saying like something like that's the game worker right now for the or the only single worker in like that you can do. I'm looking right now like for the use turning the chair and basically sitting on that chair facing that the opposite direction to where like the daily will be and like the remaining game of course will be like the banana parameter while still holding on to this like the banana parameter. So like about that like instantly that the remaining candidates like noticing that and then straight away seeing that like it's like fine that basically that like yeah allows to uh, eliminate like an attack to be along the lines like the game candidates that two people be straight away assuming like the scenario that I'm putting that way like I'm like the student candidates like I'm like slowly getting up and basically walking towards like but it like for scenario that I'm putting and then that point when I'm putting like for like different guys so he actually speak a lot and realizing the extreme danger situation and I'm that still like the Indian guy playing it in a casual manner and they put it on a fake and exactly like while like the remaining student candidates will be like slowly getting up and walking towards like the area with like Indian guy as well keeping up with like fake acting as well while having that absolute tension but then like I'm putting the guy as well as like exactly like them like slowly getting up and walking towards like the baby like with an arrow that I'm looking. So I'm covering like exactly like what they will be getting close to it, the baby and then like exactly like one of like the speaking candidates will be getting too close to like the baby like at that point I'm for like the Indian guy totally making first like move and I'm moving like the Indian guy like totally uh like eliminating a bunch of those speaking candidates like together. Uh, like the scenario that I'm saying because of like that thing and everything so like you think yeah so like I'm trying the guy would have that weapon and I'm like the guy totally and like the guy totally like standing right in front of like the area that went and I'm like the guy brings that so that's to like fight off on the like swinging candidate like the scenario that I'm and from that was attack and was attack and the kind of like attack like the guy then like I'm like uh two swinging candidates like being bad female swinging candidates being already bad in the like scenario that I'm in. So like the different guys standing in front of the area and like still like all those swinging candidates will be charging up towards like the independent guy look like was an arm setup. And like the different guy would be getting badly injured and he was just running to like at that point I'm like Minzu as well won't be able to like see that side and like Minzu as well like somehow managing to like get the right and basically being able to actually managing to like get himself into like the middle of that and trying to like that would be like attacking and trying to like help like the different guys like the scenario that I'm so like at that point I'm like all the great number of like singing candidates like totally or throwing and badly injuring like mental as well as like independent guy at that point is like just totally the friendly that will be that so there are some test and try to like that was scenario that I'm playing. And this is what I'm just like seeing is what I'm like an extremely shock me or could be seeing from like the ceiling air ventilation network area like the scenario that for the holes in like the air ventilation and like the feeling of like the fully candidate from like it will be what like the shocking things like I'm doing like it's in the underration or like it's straight away and like stomping on like that ventilation like ceiling thing and at that frame and like more probably jumping down and you're getting your straight away like taking out like taking out like that skin work out and then like in your straight away like pointing like the weapon attacks the at all the sitting candidates and then like that way that Neil at that point totally like ordering the shouting at them to like totally keep away from like that base. So yeah, that's one for like more to like see like the badly injured like independent guy as well as that Winston like basically covered like the area that means like the sonar that so like at that point I was like Neil straight away like eliminating all the remaining candidates like the scenario that are correct. That way, they are looking like the new at that point would have only integrated into back into like studio building with like that so in the so like eliminate like the officer that very same all at that point would be feeling like an assist like she has like an even greater task at that point to like ensure to like get that state safety outside and back to like the main like would be along the lines like new and especially since like vibration or like I think that the child of like Janvi or that he will be the like I'm doing so like that way the whole sort of emotion and the thing like I'm doing that at that point definitely fit with her mind to like definitely uh to definitely save the babies like the scenario like I'm looking for. So the questions for like at that point after seeing like the baby that like only highest priority at that point would be definitely to like ensure that we ensure to like that baby to save out of that Squid Island and back to the main that now that and so like that way that yeah like we also noticing that love to be back person right there but like after the no to game up regarding it so like I'm doing at that point like quickly running to that love to be back and like quickly taking a certain extent of like money and stuffing it into like more like pockets without wasting any time and then like when you all would be taking out like those linguistic like to the Indian as well as like the game of that thing like I'm pretty sure this point like I'm doing like the sound of it like I'm doing definitely getting heard by like the VIPs and like the VIPs questioning like the frontman as to like what's going on and at that point like when I was like the frontman info at that point they told me saying that basically the sound of the turban of like they would be like the infiltration of like Junho and his team so like I'm definitely with like captain for having ordered for the two like and both about like uh not like the government of like education so like into definitely would have arranged like the operations to count like the infiltration of like when he might be the case so like not even bothering at all like the scenario one of the scenario that I'm doing or like the current situation of like different mining program like info is like right in front of like Sandro like I'm maybe in that room like the sound of like weapons won't be uh, able to be get heard it's like also the another person that I'm thinking that way like maybe that work info as well as Sandro not realizing like the fight that have taken place in like the second and later this is like the other problem scenario that so like I'm putting like anyway for like neo to like to be stuff and all they all like to play also like quickly will be like the moment like neo will be entering into like the second and that neo will be also destroying like the CCTV cameras in that one as well like the scenario that is and like neo totally with that absolute after like stuffing a bunch of government like money into like neo pockets like neo totally entering back into that get back into like the air ventilation area and like New at that point would be like staying of like really dealing with like doctors later and New York's like only priority at that point would be to like get the AD like safety and so like I'm definitely New York probably quickly like that we're getting that they're all the baby like mental as well as like the individual island like you're probably quickly getting the into that ventilation pathway is like in the scenario that I'm looking and that way very like that they through that air ventilation pathway like you would do like making it out of like this game building uh along with like the equine guy as well as like Vincent as well as like the baby like at that point it's like the scenario that I'm looking for so like the Indian Print right now as for like it's that proposition that like the frontman info to like connecting to that Sangon and like the release user like and like it will be most likely that like for like Sangon to actually hand over like the baby to that the frontman and to have like the baby grow up in like that up with luxury as like the thought of that frontman info and basically to eventually be like the distinctives of higher of that running which will get for like import to like transfer that streams of like to her and like I'm saying like the actuality of that the reason would be definitely because of that the import of me being so extremely crazy to like the point that like industry crazy to like the point that like in gold is only seen like a possibility of that crazy like in his like experience like tracking a lot more of like even bigger short of like ERPs to that involves that game if that basically that fact that like the baby was born during that experience and basically that baby growing up to eventually able to like eventually grow up and take the reins of like to like totally from like the experience like that number to like in a crazy and extremely strange and realistic manner like I'm like totally seeing that as like something that like once like that word that like thing would be like spreading among like the VIPs like that point like when like a lot more VIPs into like the students of like in that country get on the lines like so they don't think so like from in what point of view like in most like ultimate goal would be to like have like those students in that country to that end up being like even like continue being like not only continue being like the website should grow even bigger and bigger and to that is for that people like spread more because like the PF is all of like the work even more would be the ultimate like the stadium in that in like in this country like this to be like the best would be what like maybe you know like ultimate vote might be certainly my opinion. So like to see that to actually see that happen for info it might be like a strange thing where for info even info they don't be perfectly fine with like eventually causing the queens to that girl that to that also like gently ones that will raise up but like what it would be like the ultimate priority will be to like see like the students and the students on like thinking like plus students like maximum to get on the line to the thing for like that involved definitely right now but for like the proposition that involved the making to like content would be that standard agrees for that like and like involved would be ensuring the safety of not only the baby but also of like Sangam in like the sixth to be and basically by stealthily rigging like the game would be along the lines info would be right now revealing to Alexander. And if Alexander doesn't agree to like the proposition, then info would be totally then info would be totally turning like the game against Alexander so that to ensure that Sanjay will be getting eliminated in through that afterwards stealth turning the game so extremely against Sanjay to ensure that uh, Sanjay doesn't survive this game. Will be along the lines of info right now would be threatening Sanjay concerning the future of the Sanjay but also of the babe as well or relying in the future of Sanjay and connected to that video and like the area everything might be the case but in area was. So maybe for like scenario is that after saying all this the combine and whole totally taking off the select mask and basically showing Sanjo that info it was in person that time and that way to totally maybe that way it was okay attempting to totally have Sanjo agree to that info select for purposes that can be the scenario that I'm going to when I been the personal and while info is quite planned on right now in the person is in info stuff which is in game building and so then while the current situation is improving him to do something as he wants to Sanjo and yet the fact that info the when bothering the the proposition to Sanjo compared to putting maybe that might be due to the elimination of might have been such an absolute great front info might have been used part of when someone info might have been as an absolute great front for info maybe might have been the only front that info might have had. It's also about the declaring. My example for the manipulation with the ugly diagrams as well as the important part as well. So in over there right now, community is feeling that void and will be totally feeling as if he needs some he needs a friend to be a bit of praise or a friend and then that way due to that reason a different name might be due to people feeling that absolute void princess that can be right now would be even bothering to make this proposition with Sanjay, which I'm just the proposition, I'm just even as part of the proposition, I'm just in both maybe even telling Sanjay that basically could be with Sanjay having fallen for inputs trapped by basically destroying his own ideologies and eliminating Sego. And on top of that, with Sangon right now, once again destroying all of Sangon ideologies and I think promise I think that Sangon has made to turn to the baby totally Sangon totally breaking all of that and basically by abandoning the baby just to make into the front man and all that. So that was repeatedly Sanjon totally showing the things that and that Sanjon videos and right now made from of the feeling that is by now that Sanjon might have ended up getting thinking that the way into had been thinking and that time. And basically that so into the right now feeling as if basically that he would be able to fill that void in his life of losing friend by making Sangyeon in his partner in running the games and everything. By now Sangyeon might have thoroughly changed to Sangyeon's time in the 20 works to games Sangyeon by now could have completely changed into a totally different person and so it would be feeling that he right now offers that Sangyeon the offer to be the partner of in the basically at that point Alexander might complete agree to be along the lines involved the right of feeling. So this as well would be what info might be then referring to as like the baby as well as like someone's like future. Might be the case certainly not the brain. And this might be the reason for like info even bothering with like proposition with like someone certainly by the brain. So like the human preemption right now as for like the government for right now giving the black weapon to like cycle and that will breaking the game rules as well like then unfair manner like giving that special advantage to like Sancho and all that. Like I'm definitely info even bothering to do for this like going through such great extent while in like the position of like the format and all that but bring that to be totally while even to going through like kind of like stripping like even like the VIPs solely to like save Sanjon. And then bring like that lead would be all due to that info and definitely as like Sanjon right now even leading like all events after Sanjon she still has faith in people like definitely this would be all like in-house like attempt to like totally thoroughly cover Sanjon and turn Sanjon completely against like Sanjon entirely of like Kanban's initial ideology, and that way to have that complete conversion happening to like Kanban into taking up like the exact ideologies of that of like info, so that like info will be getting that absolute front and will give like fill that void which like info will be deeply having right now. With like the loss of like the Latin guide as well as like with like the loss of like even like the Boatman Park as well might be the case for the like I'm switching to my social media and that like if we up the Latin guide might have definitely been like the actual product of like info might have been the case definitely and info even like getting Sangion to that to enter it even like after like might have been after like not like it's all gone the shock of like the realization of like Santos having eliminated like the Latin guy at that point I'm like it might have been that that's what intent to like deliver that as suffering to like Santos like then have that way have Santos make to like the final game of like the Squid games in like 2024 and that way I think like this is Squid game that way for invoke himself to like fight Sandron and they suppose even was suffering to like Sandron and then to like eliminate Sandron and that they to like get that absolute revenge on Sandron might be with this thing the winners pick into that like inform my out of it got us by pretending as if like basically like Sandron it was on Sandron's own account that like Sandron had even through that limousine had even taken that situation and end up into like the games in like civilians in like 2024, like yet exactly a different situation might be roughly that Russian roulette game like that basically like Sandor has played for like the likely guy who might definitely be like a like younger person that might have been like info totally like totally have played more that confident on like an upper like a guy totally through that Russian roulette like game like could have been eliminated Sandor might have been the case like when it's definitely not correct. But like the elimination of like the likely guy with Sandor might have been such an shock for like info so like that way, like on that way, on that might again my people might have started to like make the move that trend that has something of that revenge on that Sanjay. And it might be at that point that you know made it move to like ensure that like Sanjay like get front like generate as well get your into like experience in like 2024 and that way like even like the elimination of like generates by you know might have been part of like info on that has been suffering to like revenge to like Sanjay for like even more than like trying to like stop like the civilians, like even more than that, it might have been like to like some those like make it the last thing that might be the case, especially when preparation. But like I'm putting like eventually one flag, the flag it was just now even receiving like the call and totally finding out about like about my past like elimination. Well, at that point, the player to be remembered that info might have felt that as good boy of like uh, and that absolute feeling of like loneliness and absolute void in his life, and he might have protected, might have gotten that feeling that's been having a feeling of and actually one in his life. So like at that point, like so that the it might get that point that like info might have that change might have happened to like info. So what might have initially wanted to like for or that revenge of like a suffering to like Sanjon and initially towards the end of like the religion was to like eliminate Sanjon might have been what like might have planned, but like I'm putting all hearing like the talking news about like the elimination of like the boardman path. Like at that point, might have decided to probably uh might be at that point that like might have decided to have Sangon secretly meet with like info and basically for him to like make proposition to like Sangon. It should be definitely that final finishing touch of that final maximum it's much to have like Sangon to point to so ideologies and everything Sangon believes in to like the maximum through by giving the right number of this weapon to next one, and since like in Dago's case, like just a single person that like someone has eliminated like the whole right now that making that is the after by giving this weapon and without something has been given weapon that basically someone could only taking the weapon and basically someone would be totally eliminating all of like the other civilian candidates. So like at that point, I'm looking like Sanjay could be getting even more, would be turning even more to like that would be that final finishing first, which will be resulting in like that absolute conversion happening to the Sanjay and Sanjay turning exactly like into and totally fully embracing like in those ideology. So that like at that point, for like into to most likely make Sanjay maybe when it was like fun while conducting like the experience might be like from this point on might be that in host from the next year onwards like might be that like happening so that like in will be able to like fill that void in like uh, with like signed on from info might probably want to like me to like for instance definitely might just be able to story and that way like I'm showing like the baby as well I'm like involved with obviously seeing as like basically the next higher to like April now right now the game like info that's like running like begin like in maybe as well would be um that what info will be seeing like the way to be like the next higher to like eventually like the thing is that uh to like to give up like info and eventually that way. And then another line like info might also land that we might be like something was like pretty much like info you also think that basically like the way it works that born within like the students of perfect like the students like basically it's only rightfully deserving to be that the and he will be like usually who's able another man of helping and Brandon and that way ending up becoming like the winner of like the Squid Games in like 2024 along with like Sandro will be only rightfully deserving to be like giving the descendants of higher next higher to take like the Squid Games forward would be down the line like as well in over the web screen so like even while in over the same or the sense who would be that while making this proposition and basically telling Sandro that like once like Sandro is like that way if like Sandro listens to like info and basically like Sandro eliminates like the thing again and Sandro could like leave with like the baby that even while info is saying this like after like info bit only having planned in his mind that like even if like even one without behind that concept that like Sandro that he will be doing exactly what info wants and like info be also having the confidence that like even if like Sandro laptop that and laptop like the winner of that set and 24 things around the chapter daily and leave the skip here and basically it makes it back to like the main line still like it would be totally will be having that conference or off conference that like still definitely under mind by then would have totally changed to being like almost like extremely like the very same like voice like realistic mindset and ideology so that like in totally expecting either like for some or even if that is I'm looking back to like the main and make exactly that the previous winners of like this Indian like the board might have definitely might have been like the winner of like the previous Indian as well as like I'm looking at among like the multiple previous winners of like the Indian some like there might have been multiple of them that might be working for like experience like maybe even like the officer as well maybe elected or maybe having been like the winner of that kind of like experience definitely if I will get it. So definitely that way to like have so like I'm open again more and that point will be thing that will be like planned on runs back to like the main lab safely with like the lady still eventually Sandra himself with this like visitor might end up like falling trying like on like against with that and with this to that three part experience by William Walker. And that way at that point to like end up making Sandra to select partner that probably that running experience around that inside this like I begin those plans that need my good share.